Recording in progress.
And we are live. I don't think we're allowed to say that this time. It's copyright. I snorted. Will you do that again? You just blew the mic out there. Yeah, I think Jensen peed a little there. he jumped in his chair.
Sorry about the noise, guys. I just kicked something with my foot.
MD, what state am I missing?
That's Maryland, buddy.
So part of me wanted to say Massachusetts. I was like, that's not the state. That's the wrong one.
Massachusetts doesn't have a D in it. Did you have something to add? That's what I thought.
No.
Well, I was going to say something about how I couldn't pronounce Schaumburg, but can say Shropshire.
Shropshire just makes sense. It's like
Shropshire.
It's so quick lesson to all the Americans whilst I'm here. So don't say Shire, just say Sh.
It's Shire.
So do the hobbits live in the Shire?
They live in the Shire.
I mean, come on.
Hobbitshire.
No, it's Shire.
So come back next time for Jensen Talk.
Yeehaw! Welcome in, everybody, to episode 71 of the Plastic Posse podcast. We are glad you've joined us for yet another episode of the Posse. We are down a couple of Posse members. Mr. Mayberry is at a model show in San Diego, allegedly to have some fun. I think he's out looking for a couple of trophies today and hanging out with some friends. So we wish him luck, and hopefully he'll post some pictures. And then Mr. Bonani, he is out of state with some family business, so he won't be joining us today. But let's not focus on the negative. I am joined from across the pond by a friend of ours, Mr. Jensen Taylor. Jensen, we haven't seen you a lot. Welcome.
Thank you very much. It's so nice to be back in this seat.
How are things? How you doing?
Magnificent. Like, yeah, probably the best they've ever been. It's a strange feeling. I'm kind of waiting for it to end, but yeah, everything's really good. I'm on cloud 9, and I hope it continues for as long as possible.
Oh, that's excellent. I can see the sun is beaming through your window, which is unusual when we're recording.
It is. It's a glorious day. The sun's out. The temperatures. I'd say it's hot, but compared to you guys, I'm not going to say that. But yeah, it's everything's good. The sun's shining. It's a beautiful day.
Nice. That's incredible. All right, Mr. Haller, how are things in Virginia this morning?
Not too bad. It's not morning anymore. It's afternoon. Thank you. Yeah, not too bad. Not too bad. Got a nice weekend spooled up and taking my daughter to see Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse, I think that's the subtitle tonight. So yeah, got that going for me.
You have to let us know how that is. I love that first.
I already know great. It's amazing. It has like a 96 or 97% on Rotten Tomatoes. Every review I've read said it's amazing. So the only negative great. I read was it's a little long, which, okay.
Yeah, I'm okay with that.
As long as it's good, I don't care how long it is. It's the only time when a movie is too long is if it gets boring, which is not what they said. They just said it has a long runtime, but it's substantial. It's good the entire time. So I'm here for it.
Awesome. Mr. Smith, how you doing, Doug?
I'm doing really well, thanks. Super busy here, working on my yard, getting a little bit of painting done, but I'm doing great. And I also have tickets to see Spider-Man this afternoon. So yeah, I'm stoked. I'm really excited about it.
Nice. You were over at the reptile room last night helping out, right?
Yes. It's been a busy month, mostly for me because their main volunteers have been out of town. And so I've been doing both of their open nights. So Mondays and Fridays, I'm there every night. Hopefully that drops back to one night a week here in the next couple of weeks. And then I'll be having a little more time at home.
That false water cobra, I think that you were holding like a week ago, man, that's a pretty awesome looking snake.
She's wonderful. She's about 7 feet long, maybe going to get bigger. We'll see. She's got incredibly smooth scales, and she has a head like a cobra. I mean, she's got those giant head scales, and she is mildly venomous. So it's an interesting hold there. We don't generally hand her out for a lot of people to hold, because most animals there we let people hold, but that one, there's just no doing it with her, unless somebody says absolutely, I understand the risk. But she's never bit anybody, so we're good.
I'll just be honest. Mildly venomous doesn't make me all that comfortable.
Well, for me, it's more the personality of the animal, because I wouldn't pick up a 3-foot snake I knew was going to bite me. Yeah, even if it was not venomous. I don't take bites. I mean, I do, but I try not to.
I have. While you guys have been having your adventures, I have been playing Diablo 4. It's awesome. Got to play it. I bought early access, I guess because I waited 10 years. I couldn't wait 4 more days. So I did that, but it's been awesome. Loving that, having a good time. Well, let's kind of circle back around to Jensen. Jensen, what's the bench looking like, and what, if anything, have you been working on?
So my bench looks like the one shop in the first Harry Potter movie. It's like dusty, it's been abandoned, it's not been used in ages. But I have stuff to do. And I know I've got lots of things to do because I leave for the US in 54 days. And my Churchill for our finest hour group build that a few of us are doing. I know TJ's the most progressed and I'd say nearly done. Jackson, Zach, and I think Peter Vidlotsky's joining in as well. That needs doing for Nats, and currently mine is still in sealed bags. So that really, really needs starting. It's one of those, I've been doing a lot of thinking about modeling and not a lot of modeling. It's strange. It's just, I'm going to use the excuse that we don't have air conditioning and our houses get really hot when it gets warm. So this room is kind of hard to be in, but enough of the excuses. I need to get back to the bench. I'm actually going to later this afternoon once there's a few boxes just there. But yeah, I'm going to have a good little session tonight because I'm free as a bird. I have nothing to do and it's going to be good. But yeah, the bench is kind of exactly how it's been for a while. There's been no progress on anything, but that's going to change because I know the deadline very quickly approaches.
Any new acquisitions or new kit purchases?
Oof, no, I've bought nothing. No, I've not really been buying anything. And not because I haven't wanted to. I love buying stuff. Everyone knows that. There's just not really been anything I've wanted to buy, really. Nothing that's really pushed me to be like, oh, I want that or I need that now. I know there will be purchases in the future, but right now, no, there's been nothing making its way through my letterbox.
TJ, what about you? What's your bench looking like?
As Jensen alluded, I've been working on my Churchill NA75, my quote-unquote conversion. I don't know if I'd go that far. I mean, all I did was put a new gun mount in it. So I guess technically conversion. It's going pretty good. I've got I did some sponge chipping and some brush chipping on it. I put a pen wash on it last night. I need to matte coat it, and then I took the Master Club tracks upstairs to blacken them. So I'll probably do that later today if I have time. I got a pretty busy day today, actually. So I don't really think blackening metal tracks is a necessity because I paint my tracks always. Doesn't matter if I blacken them or not. It's just what I do. And especially like Churchill tracks, because most common Churchill tracks were manganese steel, which is not like a super dark color. Like when it oxidizes, it's actually like a kind of like a light color, almost where it almost looks dusty. It's like a tannish gray color. It's a weird color. If you ever see a picture of a Churchill in running condition, that's what their tracks look like. They don't get like super, super dark like a lot of people think tank tracks do. So they have to be painted anyway. So even if I blacken them, they wouldn't be the right color. But I kind of use it as like a little bit of a primer. So like I said, I'll probably do that later today. I've been working on my MiG-21R in Cuban service. I've got the cockpit all painted up. I've got the engine painted, which I bought an aftermarket engine, which I don't know why, because you can't see any of it, but whatever. It looks cool. I'm waiting for an exhaust nozzle that I bought, because if anyone's built the Edward kit, so dumb. I don't know why they did it this way, because apparently it is not this way in the 72nd scale version. If you ever see a MiG-21, the engine is inside, and then there's like an exhaust nozzle on the outside, and it's usually bare, like natural metal. It just colored stuff. It's cool. It's a neat area. It's like you would see in a lot of other aircraft. But the way the Edward kit is that instead of making that nozzle a separate piece, and it has ribs on the inside too, it's part of each half of the fuselage. So when you put it together, you have a seam on the outside you have to deal with and a seam on the inside over ridges, which are supposed to be there. It's a dumb design. So Quick Boost offers a resin one, so you can glue together. And I also modify the inside so I can slide the engine tube, because it's like a tube assembly. I can slide that out, or I can glue it together, cut the end off, put the new resin exhaust nozzle on, then slide the engine in, so I don't damage like the baffles on the engine, because it's all like resin as I cut it off with my saw. So whenever I get that, I'll probably get back on that, because I can't really do a whole lot until I get that. But it's been a fun kit. Like, I love the MiG-21. It's a cool airplane. I really like Cold War jets to begin with, especially long and skinny ones like that. I don't know what it is about that, because that kind of leads into, because I know you're going to ask me if I bought anything, and the answer is yes. I bought a Kinetic F104A/C Starfighter, which we were talking about a little bit before we started recording. Apparently, it's a really good kit. I've never built I haven't built very many airplanes, as anyone knows. But this one's supposed to be pretty good. I love the F104. Again, it's just a long, spindly, strange-looking aircraft with stubby little wings, and I think they're gorgeous. So yeah, I have that. I bought a little bit aftermarket for it. I bought an ejection seat from ResKit, I think, because the ejection seat in the kit is okay, but the ResKit one's nice. It's got a molded on harness and everything, so I get to stretch my figure painting ish skills on that. And I think I bought like an exhaust nozzle for that one too, something like that. I can't remember exactly what I bought. And yeah, and then some paint, so I can paint it in sea camo, which is Southeast Asia camo, not like sea, like ocean sea. But yeah, so that one will probably move up in the queue pretty quick. And what else have I been working on? I think that's pretty much it. So yeah, I've been busy.
Man, Wildcat now MiG-21. People are going to be scratching their heads.
I love the MiG-21. I don't know, there's something about it. They're really cool. And of course, MiGs of that era have the turquoise cockpit, which I love and have used in non-aircraft models. I've done it on a couple of Machine Krieger kits using that exact color. And yeah, I don't know. They're just really cool looking.
What's that Edward kit like, putting the fuselage? How's the fit of the kit overall?
So far, it's been pretty good. The only thing that I am worried about is, and this is just through some dry fitting, the way you build it, you have to put the nose cone in first, which I've already painted it and started to weather. So I'll mask that, and then you glue the two halves together after you put all the cockpit assemblies in. And then you can slide the engine in. And then the way it works, it's kind of strange that the wings are attached to the bottom of the fuselage, like the bottom of the wings of the bottom of the fuselage are one piece. And then that top piece drops into that. And then you put the top half of the wings on, and then you can glue it along the side of the fuselage. Where that bottom piece with the wings, and also where the wheel wells are, where it fits on the fuselage, there's this pretty significant gap between either the front or the back. So I'm going to have to probably choose on the back, because it also kind of questionable design. That joint is also in the leading edge on the underneath side of the wing. It's I don't know why they did it that way. I wish they hadn't. That seems like it'd be too difficult to deal with, but I'm going to have a pretty significant gap, which is where a panel line is supposed to be. So I'm not that much worried about it. It doesn't have to be completely flush, but I asked Justin Lentz about it, and I was like, hey man, because he's built like 5 of them. I'm like, hey, but he's not built the R. I was like, have you had this on any of your builds? He's like, no, I've never seen that. So maybe I've heard of like variants in Edward kits where some kits it won't fit right, and then that same kit someone else builds, like, yeah, mine didn't fit that well. Like, I want to say with the Wildcat, Robbie Knopf's had a weird fit issue on a piece, but when I got to that on mine fit perfectly fine. I can't remember what it was. Might have been the cowling over the IP. I don't remember, but everything on mine fit perfect. So maybe it's just one of those weird Edward things. I don't know. I'm not looking forward to that, but I've already fit pretty much all the major assemblies, because there's a fair amount of sub assemblies on it, because the whole, I don't know what the tail fin, I guess the part that sticks up, is that what that's called? I don't know. I'm not an airplane guy.
The vertical stabilizer.
Yeah, the vertical stabilizer is it's two pieces you put together. That fit really well. It fits on the fuselage really well. Then there's like a hump that goes from the cockpit to the vertical stabilizer in the back. That's one piece, which is nice. That fits really nice. So the seam along the body is really nice. Yeah, so I've done all the major sub-assemblies and everything fits really nice. There's not a whole lot of seam work you have to worry about because of that hump on the back covers the rear seam, which is nice. And then there's a little bit underneath that you have to worry about too. But yeah, I mean, again, I don't have a lot of frame of reference for literally any aircraft kit. So to me, it's fine. So there's probably better stuff out there. I would imagine.
The reason I asked the question is it seems like the reactions to that kit from modelers have been pretty varied. And like you said, I don't know how many boxings that Edward's done on that, but there's a ton of different variants with different, there's 1 seat, 2 seat variations, nation specific. So yeah, I'd say maybe the fact that tooling's modular might lead to some variation. Doug, Jensen, I don't know if either of you guys have ever built that kit.
I built the MiG-21 SMT back in the day, 2016, 2017. I built it. It's something TJ mentioned. I love the fact that the spine is just like one piece and it just covers so much work. Like now having to deal with that. I'd never really found issue with my kit again, but I built that nearly 5-6 years ago now. But yeah, loved it. I think the MiG-21s are amazing. Don't know what the 72nd ones are like. I have no idea. But yeah, the 48th one, it's a kit I'd happily build again. I've just obviously not been in an aircraft mood, but yeah, I find them a joy to build. I think the only issue I had with one of mine was this little panel that goes in front of the windscreen. And I just found that to be a bit of a weird fit with that piece and the 2 canopy sections. But that was probably just like my own modeling skill back in the day, not being all that refined. But yeah, it's a lovely kit. I love the MiG-21. Like TJ said, it's just an awesome aircraft. It looks really pretty, especially in natural metal or the camo. Just it looks good however it comes. Yeah, really good kit. I like it.
That's cool. And that engine cone, is that weird green color, TJ? That
goes the nose cone?
Front? Yeah, the nose cone.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it's an interesting color. I used whatever they recommended in the kits. It's a Mr. Color paint. It's like bright green. It is really bright.
It is really bright.
So there's not a whole. So mine's Cuban, and the Cuban MiGs have this strange blue and green camo. It's really cool. That's why I chose this one, because it's an awesome camo. It's the same camo that's on the weekend edition boxing of the MiG-21R. I got the Profit pack, so it had all the extras inside, and it's one of the options in that. So I used like a splatter template and I pulled apart some like steel wool, I guess like a Brillo pad, and mixed some different greens using the bright green as a base. And then I think I used some flat green from Tamiya too, because it's like a little like darker, richer green, and then some buff, I think, and then kind of did like a fading, just varied surface, and it'll be further weathered when I actually weather everything together, just to give it a little, so it's not just bright ass green like right in your face.
That's a good approach. Yeah, that I've always thought that was kind of an interesting feature of the 21. Well, Doug, what's been on your bench? What have you been working on, man?
My bench is a silly mess. You can barely see either of my tank craft mats. I am working on stuff. I've actually been kind of hooked on those dinosaur busts I've been printing. I've got 2 that are actually being painted now, a Pachycephalosaurus. If you don't know what that is, it's the bonehead dinosaur that, real thick skull. They've always been one of my favorites. And so I'm painting one of those. I've done some little T-Rex busts. I've got a Triceratops bust that just finished printing. I'll pull that off and see how it looks pretty soon. Just having fun with the dinos. Staring at the boxes of started kits that are sitting over here, which we'll get some work done this week. I'm actually looking forward to having a little extra time this coming week and getting some actual kit work done. The tie interceptor that I have, I'm just trying to figure out how I want to paint it, because I'm not convinced that I want to do a classic tie interceptor paint scheme. I want to do something new with it, but I don't want to do the same thing that other people have done, just because, I don't know. I want it to be kind of my own, but trying to make that decision still.
Yeah, I get that for sure. Speaking of tie interceptors, I've been really kind of off into the weeds in 3D printing. I've been working on a 124 scale Colonial Viper It's almost finished. The model's over 16 inches long. It's really cool. My new printer is doing a great job. And the guy that made the STL for my Viper, Elaine Rivard, we talked about him in the last episode. He's been working on a sand crawler and kind of ran into a wall on that. And so while he was waiting, he started his next project, which is going to be a TIE bomber. And I will be all over that for sure.
Definitely. I want one. I've always wanted one. It's just never been a thing for us. It's never been available. So,
yeah. So, I mean, so far, his CAD work is incredible. He's just started on, the twin round sections in the center of the craft. And man, it looks really, really, really good. Also been 3D printing for our good friend, Martin Drayton. How you doing, Martin? I am printing him a 1/35th scale APC from Aliens, and I have the two halves of the hull printed, and now start working on all the detail parts. So that's kind of a project for him. But yeah, the Viper's great. The way Elaine designed it, there's the part at the back of the fighter where the three engines are has a hole running through that whole thing. Then in the back of the fuselage, that hole is there as well. And so I ordered a 10 millimeter solid aluminum rod that you can use to align the model and make it really, really strong, which is great. But now I have to figure out how to neatly cut a 10 millimeter aluminum rod. I think it's like 400 thousandths of an inch. So, the Dremel's not going to cut it. So I find a buddy here locally that has like a bandsaw or something like that. So I can get that done. So yeah, just 3D printing, my new M3 Premium and the Soraya Tech resin, that navy gray resin is beautiful stuff. And just really having a blast with that.
The Plastic Posse podcast is sponsored by Tankcraft. In addition to their awesome cutting mats, Tankcraft also makes some incredible scale modeling tools for your workbench. Want to keep extra thin cement off your bench and in the bottle where it belongs? Check out Tankcraft Glue Base, designed to stop glue spills in their tracks. The glue base is made from solid mill aluminum and comes with a stable rubber base pad and can accommodate most square and round cement bottles. And while you're there, check out their line of cutting mats and other unique modeling tools. Remember, Posse listeners get 15% off their first order by using the code POSSE15. So head on over to tankcraft.com. That's TANKRAFT.com.
Let's lead over into our discussion point for the episode. And, as I was thinking about what I kind of wanted to talk about, I kind of thought about, recognizing improvement that we've made as part of our progression. TJ, I'm going to kind of blame this topic on you a little bit. I kind of was thinking of you because you create a lot. You kind of burn through a lot of things, and each project you usually seem to focus on something for you that's new, or perfecting something or improving something. And so what I wanted to talk about today is, we talk about, as modelers, we're always trying to improve and get better. So we critique our work. We have our friends, critique our work. But I kind of want to look at our progression maybe through a different lens today, and maybe take a step back and look back. And so my question, and I think TJ, will start with you. What are a couple of areas, or an area that maybe you feel like you've really progressed in during the last 12 months? And maybe how did you get there? And then what's your plan to continue to grow with that area or areas?
Man, I knew you were going to start with me. I was going to try to think about that a little more. Damn, that's a good question. Put me on the spot. One of the things that I think I have gotten much better at, especially if you're just saying last 12 months, is figure painting. I think that if you look at a figure that I've, like the last figure that I did, which now I don't even remember what it was, if you compare that to the first one, which was about a year before that, it's substantially better. Oh, it was the French infantryman, I think, was the last figure that I did. That figure is much better than, say, the Swiss mercenary bus I did a year ago. And it was about a year ago this time. That's a really tough question now that you now that I'm thinking about it.
Well, I mean, let's talk about it as a group, because I think it's something that, we share offline. We share our builds with each other and our progress. And so I think we get to see sort of how these projects come about and, what's maybe different than the last time that we do. So for me, I think the thing I want to talk about it, and I am not saying at all that I'm great at this, but incorporating bases into my builds has become a real focus of what I've tried to do. I've only done 3 or 4, but whether it's a simple little, 3x5 piece of foam, or whether it's, like more like the Y-wing where it's, wood and it's got different elements incorporated into it. I just really think that incorporating those bases into my builds has made a difference for me anyway, and how I view those pieces and the story that those pieces tell. And so, as far as what I've done, I've just started trying to make sure that each project, that as I'm, looking at the project and, go at the planning stage, trying to plan, okay, the model, this is what I'm going to do for the model. That's great. But where's that model going to sit? What's the scene going to look like? Is it going to be a freshly, maintained tank? Is it going to be something that's knocked out in action? Is it going to be, the Y-wing flying across a trench? Kind of that base gives it context. So what is that context going to be? Jensen, I take a lot of inspiration from you on bases, and, one of the builds that you and I, we didn't work on it together, but as you were building it, we were talking about it. Your Ford ambulance, the base on that to me really took that build from like an 8 or a 9 to like an 11. And so just kind of wondering what your perspective is on, what your approach is to making bases.
Too kind. Thank you. That was one of those weird builds. It's like the ambulance was always part of the project that was done for the magazine, but the base, I always knew it was going to have a base. As the ambulance progressed and that build kind of got towards the end, I still had no idea how I was going to base it. I knew it was going to be just a small vignette, something kind of simple, just really to show off the model. I did spend a lot of time looking at black and white references of this vehicle and different campaigns it was used in, different areas and the different armies it was used. Obviously, I did it as French, even though it's an American produced vehicle. I didn't want it to be olive drab. Originally, I was just going to have it on a road that had destroyed trees. And I was like, that's cool, but it's kind of boring. And I really wanted to try and give it some vertical interest as well as just being flat with a vehicle on it. So then came Martin Kovac's video on how to build that barn he did for the big T29, I believe it is. Yeah, he built the barn. I was like, okay, I have everything I need to do these techniques. Let me just try something randomly. So I ended up building that little facade. I don't even know what it is. Is it like a barn house? It's got bricks and a door on it and a roof. I don't know. It's got pigeons. So I built that and I was like, I've got to incorporate this somehow because this was actually just a test piece and it turned out really well. So this has to end up on the scene somewhere. Then I found 2 Stalingrad tank figures. I was like, well, yeah, for a tank crew, but used to say they can't be driving a truck. Stuck them there with the dog and hey presto, a scene was created. There was no planning involved with that. It kind of was just things happened and it all came together. That scene was never my intention, but I love how it turned out.
Oh yeah, it's fantastic. It's funny that you bring working in the vertical up, because that's something we talked to our guest in our interview segment. Bill Huffman is fantastic working in the vertical, but like our FJ, I got finished with the model itself recently and I liked it. Okay. But didn't love it. But, Doug was kind enough to bring me a piece of foam. I didn't have any, and some balsa wood, and just, creating a small little scene and then using the colors that I painted the FJ in and incorporating some of those tones into the base, to me really kind of for my eye set it apart. Not that it setting it apart that it's great, because it's not, but it really makes the appearance of the model to me more interesting just sitting on that little piece of scenery. So Doug, I appreciated that. Doug, what about you? I know you've expressed some interest in maybe doing more basing on your models, and do you feel like that's something you're going to be doing more of?
Absolutely. I've only done a couple of bases so far and they're real basic, but actually putting one of my one of my little 48 scale tank builds on a base, I was just really happy to see it presented in a different way than just on sitting on a shelf, or even when I tried to make a base with a picture frame and it was okay. But actually putting it on some groundwork with a little bit of shrubbery, that was enough to actually make it, to set it off. I know, Jensen's talking about going vertical, and I'll get there someday. But right now, I'm just kind of learning the groundwork part. When we did the 48 and 48 in March, I did that the Bandai ATST. The first thing I did when we started was take the basic Bandai base, a square base that had a little bit of ripples and stuff. There was a little bit of detail in it, but I immediately took it and I glued some thin strips of foam to it to change the elevation in a couple spots, and got it started before I even started the model so that I could add to it. I'm enjoying putting the grasses on, on things, and seeing it take a shape that sets it off. Now I see it in context. I see it walking through something, and not just standing on a piece of plastic. Even if I put paint on the plastic, it's still just paint on plastic. If you start to add little details that look like dirt, that look like rocks, that look like shrubbery, it makes a huge difference to how that model appears.
I like that context. I mean, I think that's what I was kind of trying to say with bases. It gives your model context. And, I think being able to add elements like, I want to go back to TJ for a minute, talk about, figure painting. It's amazing how watching Night Shift's videos, where he really focused at first on the models, the tanks. But then as he started, like Jensen mentioned, incorporating buildings and scenery, and especially figures, I think that those give the piece not just context, but scale and weight too. Anyway, TJ, what about you and basing? And then, how did you set about to make improvements in your figure painting over the last year?
I definitely think about bases more often now than I used to. I've done a few, and will continue to do some. Like my Churchill is going to be on a base, just because the picture that I have that I built it off of, which is something I don't normally do, but it seems like I've been doing that kind of often lately. It's elevated because it's in a line with other Churchills getting ready to lay down some indirect fire to support the infantry in northern Italy towards the end of the war. And to me, the context of that vehicle, the one I chose, it works better when you see what it was actually doing and how it was positioned. And I know we've talked about before, this was probably forever ago, where I probably mentioned that I don't typically like figures on tanks, mostly because this was before. I don't think that way now. I do like figures on tanks, and I try to put figures on most of my vehicles now, because you get a frame of reference, for it, like, because you don't always intuitively know the size of something. Like if most people think in their mind, Tiger tank huge, Sherman tank small. They're not. A Sherman tank's 13 feet tall. Like, they're really tall. 13 feet is tall. Like, I've climbed on a Sherman. It is not easy to climb on that. It's a large vehicle. Yeah. And conversely, I think I was talking with Ian about the Churchill. It's not as big as a lot. Unless you've seen one in person, they're not that big. They're long. They have a long body, but they're narrow, and they're not very tall, which is part of the reason that they were successful as they were, because they're kind of short. When you put a figure next to that, it can give the viewer a frame of reference, because most people can, in their mind, think of it, a man, 5'10", average height for a man. Like, okay, I know in my mind how big a person is. Now they're next to this chunk of plastic that thing's actually really big. That's part of the reason why I like the Machine and Krieger suits with the windows in them, so you can see the person on the inside, because they're person shaped, but like most robots in that variety are, like a Gundam is person shaped too, but a person is like this, the size of a thimble next to a Gundam, where like in a Machine and Krieger suit, the suit is the whole person. It's like an Iron Man suit. So when you see the little dude inside, you're like, oh, okay, I get that. This is a large model. I got off on a on a little bit of a
No, that's good. After
sidebar.
basing, I asked you kind of to elaborate on your figure painting, what you have done to improve and how you want to keep improving.
I'm just practice. I mean, that's really the only answer I can ever give anyone is just practice. I've mentioned before, like literally anyone can do what anyone else does. Like if you watch like Martin's videos, like what he does it's not hard. Like it's just not like sure knowing what to do. That's where the skill comes in, is knowing what to do and when to do it. But like the actual mechanical process of doing what a high level modeler does is not hard. There's some skills that are probably harder for some people, like photo etch. I'm not the best at photo etch, but I also don't do it a whole lot. Like soldering is a skill, but they're all like learned skills. They're not like alchemy, right? They're not just like, ooh, poof, there it is. It's amazing. Like, yeah, I mean, I just practice and like I don't do a lot of figures, just because I like building tanks more. I try to balance everything. I think that's one of the main things I've done to I think become a better modeler, especially within the last year or so, is really diversify. And I've told people this too. I've made it a point too. Like I want to be, I don't necessarily want to be the best at one thing. I just want to be really good at like a bunch of things, right? That's why I started building aircraft. That's why I started painting figures. That's why I build science fiction and armor. I like all of those things. And I just want to be a well-rounded modeler. I want to be the type of person where if someone handed me a model, I don't care what it was, I could open the box and be like, I could build this and it'll look pretty good. Okay, it's not gonna maybe be the best thing ever. It's not going to win you gold at SMC, but like, okay, like I'll be proud of it. Like people would be like, oh, that's nice. And I think I've done a pretty good job at that. I think if I look at what I was doing a year ago compared to what I just, like the last project that I finished was the Wildcat, which I think is one of my best models. It might be presumptuous of me to say this, but I think it's really good. Is it the best Wildcat ever? Probably not. I know it's not. Is it a really good one? Yes. Do I think it's better than most of the ones I've seen on the internet? Yes. That's my personal opinion on it. You may disagree, and that's totally fine. I 100% respect anyone that does not agree with any statement I just made. I'm not saying that's the unmitigated truth. That's just how I feel. I think it's pretty good. I don't think I could have done that a year ago. I could have built it. I don't think it would have been as good as it is now, just because I've learned a lot in a year and 2 years. Like if I look back, it just, my first tank, I compare it to what I can do now. Like it's not, to me, it's not even like in the same ballpark. I could be wrong. Maybe they are equal and I'm just fooling myself, but I like to think that I'm not.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think we all see growth in, a bunch of different areas. And I love the fact, I mean, people give you crap because you build a lot. I think a lot of that's good nature. But what I like is that you don't seem to be intimidated by anything. I always admire a guy that's willing to get out of his comfort zone and just, it doesn't matter if it's a figure, it doesn't matter if it's a plane, maybe you'll bang out an aircraft carrier in 2023, who knows, but
it's funny you should say that. Because I haven't talked about this a whole lot. I promised to build someone an amphibious assault ship, which if no one knows what an amphibious assault ship is, they're essentially small aircraft carriers or helicopter carriers, sometimes what they're called. However, because America rules, our amphibious assault ships are larger than like every other aircraft carrier on the planet. And to us, like, oh, that little thing. And I still owe them that. And I have not forgotten about it. And it does weigh heavily on me from time to time. And here recently, because I think Jackson and we talked about it, I think when we were at AMPS. Oh no, we were at ODO in February, and Jackson was like, we usually just start building ships and just really like mess with everyone. He's like, you're building, you're going to build an aircraft, and now you do figures. So let's just do ships, and we'll just like throw everyone for a loop. And I'm like, it's funny you should say that. I've started to build a ship. I need to finish it. And within this last week, because I don't have anything to do at work, I'm like, I should really build that ship because I need to get it done. It was for someone that has passed, and I feel very bad about it. That's why I don't like to do commissions. So yeah, I'm probably gonna start working on it like really soon because I need to get it. I need to get it like off my conscience pretty much and get it to the person that wanted it. So yeah,
Well,
I have a ship. It's behind me.
That's cool, man. I look forward to seeing that. Well, Doug, let's circle back around with you. You know, what's an area that you feel like you've really grown in, and maybe how did you get there, and how do you want to continue to grow there?
I have gotten a lot better at looking at finer detail and taking the time to pick it out and to work on it. Where I used to just be like, you know what, I'll never see that again. I'll just, a lot of cockpit work for me was just real basic because no one's going to look inside and see what I've done. So don't waste your time with it. So that's how I would approach a cockpit. Little details on the surface. Say I'll use a Star Wars ship as an example. When I did my last X-Wing, there are little tiny panels that have different colors, and I used to just like ignore them, or I would try to heavily weather that spot to just change its color. Now I'm taking the time to tape it off and airbrush it. Those are things that have come a long way with me. And then, as I mentioned, I'm getting into these dinosaur busts. And so I'm not good with skin tones yet, although TJ hooked me up with, like, helped me find the right some good colors to practice with, and some little busts to practice on. But these dinosaur busts, I'm getting to experiment. Just throw color on, pick it up and not know what I'm going to do with it, and then just start working. When I did the Pachycephalosaurus, I had zero idea when I picked it up what I wanted to do. I didn't even know what the base color was going to be. It was primed, and I picked it up, and then I picked a base color and then I started adding tones to the skin, and then markings to the skin, and then adjusting the marking colors, lightening it, darkening it in different spots. And then it's still needing a little bit of maybe a wash on in some areas to really get some of the details to pop. But those things I've kind of tried to just allow myself to flow into some of these projects and just let it happen. Whereas if it's a Star Wars ship, most of the time I'm going to look at it and say, this is what I want to do. If it's something like that, something more organic, it's kind of fun to just let it happen. And that's something I've been working on.
I kind of have a question for you. You've really, a couple of years ago, you hadn't built really any armor, and you've done a lot of armor. And I think you've learned a lot from TJ and JB and Jensen and a lot of the people that we sort of talked to. But has building armor and weathering armor changed your approach to your Star Wars and sci-fi modeling at all?
I would say yes. And if anything, the building of the Star Wars stuff has also influenced the building of the armor. I still don't quite grasp what a lot of you guys do when you assemble a model and then, wheels and everything and then paint it. It seems foreign to me. But yeah, I like to think that everything I do influences the next project, whether it's sci-fi or if it's armor or if it's aircraft. It doesn't really matter. I'm always taking the last thing I did and learning a little bit to add to the next one. Trying to think of what I might use on armor that's quite a bit different. Weathering techniques have definitely changed using armor, using filters, using stuff like that I never really used before. Armor was what introduced me to filters, and the washes have changed a little bit. I don't know. Yeah, that's a great question.
Yeah, I think I've seen some of that. Obviously we've known each other a long time. I've seen your work for a long time, and I think as far as the weathering goes, I've definitely seen a change. And one of my favorite things about like Machine and Krieger or even Gunpla builders are the guys that sort of do both, like TJ, because I think they bring in some of those armor techniques to the science fiction palette, and I think it really makes for an interesting marriage, makes the subject more interesting too. Well, Jensen, what about you? I think this has been a pretty cool discussion so far, but where do you think that you've grown maybe in the last 12 months, and kind of how have you gotten there, and maybe how do you want to continue to grow?
I've had all this time, and yet that's still really hard to answer. It's hard because having not done a ton of modeling, I've still been doing other things. I've really been trying to get into like digital art. So it's still something. One thing, it's not so much a technique or anything. It's more of an acceptance that you're going to make mistakes. Like, no one on the planet will not. Like, and if you think you can go through life without making mistakes or errors or getting anything wrong, then fool you. Because yeah, it's just mistakes happen, and mistakes are how we improve. I make many all the time, and yeah, I'd like to think that in doing that, you learn a whole lot more from the mistakes than you do the success. Personally, I know not everyone will think the same, but yeah, it's one of those. It's hard because we all want to like be the best we can at stuff. Through what little I do at the minute is I try, and I want the time I use to be spent like quote unquote perfect. Like I want to leave that session of what I'm doing to feel like there has been progress, and I have that feeling of accomplishment and something's been completed. So it's kind of just balancing. It's like treating those moments and like treasuring them because they are really good motivators, but also thinking, okay, what didn't go well in what I was doing and how do I address that so we don't make those mistakes in the future? I know I'm in a minute. I'm saying a lot of words, but not really saying anything. I'd make a great politician. Yeah, it's just one of those. It's like I say, it's not so much a technique or anything like that. It's just it's a mental attitude. I have been doing a lot of, how do I put it? Not soul searching, but just a lot of thinking recently. And there has been certainly a change in mentality, and it's trying to find the best in everything. Whereas before I knew I was quite the pessimist, and now I just like, no, just look for the positive, look for that little bit of light, even if it's tiny in a very dark room. Just focus on that. That's for me. That's not just in modeling, but life in general. That's kind of like how I am now.
Well, I mean, that sounds like something pretty valuable. I mean, that kind of perspective. I mean, because this is supposed to be fun, right?
Exactly.
I mean, that's the rumor, is this is supposed to be a hobby. Well, appreciate it. This is a pretty good discussion. I know that I've learned some things from you guys along the way, and I appreciate kind of that perspective as well to kind of wrap that up. I kind of wish John and Grant were here to participate in this, but maybe we can talk about that online. Listeners out there, what's an area that you looking back on your last 12 months, what are some areas that you've grown in and why? How do you want to keep progressing in those areas? Please send that feedback to us, plasticpossepodcast@gmail.com. We'd love to kind of work with you. And if you want to post some photos in the group and kind of show what you're talking about, that would be terrific as well. Well, let's head on over to Doug. He's going to walk us through kind of some models that caught our collective eyes during the last couple of weeks.
Yeah. So every episode now, we've been going through the Plastic Posse Facebook page, and all of us are picking out the work that someone has done and posted to that page and highlighting that. And so let's start with Jensen. What did you see today that caught your eye?
I couldn't help but have my eyes drawn to Peter Fidlotsky's Phantom. The decals he's applied to, they look painted on. I think they are actually some of the best decals I've seen applied to any model ever. They sunk down into every rivet, every panel line. They are so smooth. The paintwork is immaculate. And I mean, Phantoms are just gorgeous. I love it because all this kind of does is reinforce my opinion that Peter is just an excellent all-rounded modeler who can just do everything because his techniques are just on point. I love it.
Yeah, I would agree. I had commented on that earlier in the week with Peter, and just it's really, really good decal work. Decals are something that I struggle with. I know some of you guys, I think TJ, you don't seem to struggle with them, but I do. It seems like some models work perfectly, and some decals on certain kits that it's just unpredictable. But yeah, those gorgeous. The way those things lay down on that Phantom, just beautiful.
Yeah, it is pretty stunning. I'm going to actually go next. I want to talk about Harrison Bueller's. He did Dragon's 1/35th scale Panther A. He did it in a 3-tone camo, had aftermarket tracks on it, and I thought it was really nice. Anyway, yeah, it turned out really, really nice. I liked the paint on it. I liked the highlighting he did, the weathering he did, everything. Just kind of popped for me. Anyway, good work, Harrison.
Yeah, it's nice work.
What about you, Scott?
So I have a couple just briefly want to touch on. The first one was our good friend Ken Childress. He did a Death Dealer bust. For those of you that don't know, Death Dealer is a Frank Frazetta, based on a Frank Frazetta painting. Frazetta is one of my all-time favorite artists. He's a fantasy guy. And anyway, Death Dealer is a real famous, one. It's a sort of a demon warrior barbarian thing that's riding this great big massive, just incredible looking horse. The bust is just the demon warrior figure, and I really like it. It's a little bit unusual in that the tones are pretty muted. I'd kind of be interested in maybe your collective takes on this, but normally, busts are a little more colorful, and this is really muted to kind of earth tones and metallics, a lot of subtle tones to my eye anyway, that really kind of sets it apart for me. I don't know if you guys saw it or what you think, but I really liked it.
When I was scrolling down that page, when I first glimpsed it, my thought was that I was like, oh, somebody's got a cool print they're going to start painting. And I scrolled back to it, and it took a second to realize that it was painted, and it was muted. It was very subtle. The color variation and the weathering and everything that he did on it. It really pops when you look at it closely, but when you're just scrolling past it, if it's just a blurry image, you don't think it's something that's been done yet. Like maybe had some primer on it, and that was about it. But when I went back and looked, I was blown away by it.
Yeah, Ken's a good dude, a very good modeler, and I've seen some of his other. I've not obviously seen that in person. I've seen some of his other. I mean, his armor is phenomenal too, which I've seen in person, and I've seen one of his figures in person. He brought one to Atlanta. It was a Viking, and I really enjoy his style. I guess subtle is how I would describe it. It's not in your face punchy, which is not something I'm the biggest fan of. That's necessarily that style, and of course the choice of subject I think has a lot to do with it too. Like you wouldn't paint Death Dealer in this ridiculous punchy high contrast scheme, because that's not what the real artwork looks like, which as you mentioned, Scott, is awesome. And just I hesitate to use the term realistic, but it is a more realism grounded style that he's used, which I appreciate. Almost like a European style, as they say in like the figure painting world, where American painters typically use non-metallic metals in this cartoony style, where European figure painters typically, not always, these aren't rules, they go with a more, I guess, organic looking and more natural metal gritty look. And that's what he's done. And I think it's awesome. I think it's really cool. Plus like you said, Scott, the artwork is based off of is an absolute. It's a legend. I mean, it's legendary fantasy artwork from a legendary fantasy artist.
Yeah. Frazetta was amazing. And then I also, I'm going to cheat and do too. I also wanted to shout out our buddy over at the Geeks, Scott Samo. He did an Arma Hobby Key 84, and it's that natural metal with the overpainted, green camouflage. And it's always a stunning kind of striking paint scheme, but Scott really nailed this. Like if there's a black anti-glare panel along the top of the front of the fuselage, and also on the propeller blades, which are this really cool green color the Japanese used. But he used, I heard on the podcast, I think he used an airbrush needle to distress it to do it. But it's got these tiny little chips that look really beautiful in 1/72nd scale. And then the other thing, his airbrush work, and of course we wouldn't expect anything less from Nemo on this, but his airbrush work is really in scale. And for a 1/72nd scale random squiggle over natural metal, that's a palette that's every little mistake you make, it's going to show up. It's going to raise its hand and say, here I am. And man, he crushed it. So anyway, great job, Nemo. Beautiful model. I know you don't do 72nd scale a lot, but you really, really nailed that one. So I really like that one. I don't know what you guys thought, but.
Oh, it's Nemo, so it's good.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's not really anything else to say about Nemo's work. I mean, it's tight. I think the whole world knows that. His aircraft they're ridiculous in a good way. I love his aircraft. They're some of my favorite.
All right, TJ, take us out. What did you see?
Okay, so my pick is going to be Patrick Neff's F-16C Block 30. that he did on this really interesting base. And I'll go ahead and preface this with, I'm not the biggest fan of complicated bases, like on the outside, right? Not what's going on the base where the model sits. However, this one is probably one of the most unique I've ever seen. He used a repurposed flight suit wrapped around the wooden base. First of all, the model is spectacular. F-16 is sweet. I think I've said it before. It's my favorite of the modern jets. I love F-16s. They're so cool. And his is absolutely stunning. Makes me really want to build F-16. And it's sitting on a tarmac that he painted too, which is really cool. And just the whole thing, the whole presentation, I just absolutely love it. Yeah. For me to like something that has an elaborate base is hard because, as I just said, I don't particularly care for that. Like I like simple outside of, like all mine, they're black on the outside because that's just the way I like it. That's the way I do it. That's the way I like it. However, when done right, this is part of it. Like the base isn't too tall. It's the right height to fit what he wanted in it. And it complements the model in a positive way. And yeah, the model itself is it's a stunner. He has a Facebook page and a Instagram account. It's called Bogey Scale Models. I highly recommend anyone go follow it because his work is legit.
I'll echo that, TJ. That the base is really eye catching, but it's really classy as well. It's not flashy or gaudy. And I don't know what that little cart off to the side is, but that is a really great touch. It really catches the eye. And again, it gives the model a sense of scale as well as the base and the paintwork on the tarmac. Like you said, it's just great job. I mean, just Patrick, really solid, beautiful little piece.
Awesome. So that's what we have now. We're going to talk about upcoming events, and that goes over to Jensen.
Indeed, you do. So, first of all, on the list, we have the IPMS Nationals in San Marcos, Texas, August 2nd till the 5th. The big one. Are you all excited?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely.
Same.
I said when we recorded the last episode that I would buy my ticket that night, and I did. So, yes, awesome. I'm really stoked.
Whoop, whoop. And then on Saturday, I'm turning American. On Saturday, August 19th, 2023, is the Best of the West show presented by IPMS Las Vegas and the consortium of other modeling clubs. The Orleans Hotel and Casino in Las Vegas, Nevada. Next, we have the Central Arkansas Scale Modelers 22nd Annual Show, September 29th and 30th, 2023, at the Jacksonville Community Center, a few miles northeast of Little Rock. This one looks awesome, with seminars by Jim Rice, Rusty Nail, and Ken Childress. Next, IPMS Orange Con Model Show in Buena Park, California, October 1st. Then PAXCon 2023, aka Geek Fest, at Hollywood Volunteer Fire Department, Hollywood in Maryland, on October 7th. And then
Hold on, can I jump in? Can I jump in real quick about PAXCon?
Yes, indeed.
I think per Tim Holland on the last Geeks, they still have some tables open, and they still have award packages to sponsor. So and they're pretty cheap. So if you want to do that, they have a website. I think it's just I'll put it maybe in the show notes or have someone do it. I think it's just Southern Maryland Scale Modelers. That's their IPMS chapter. So this is their first show. Help them sell their stuff out. I know I will be purchasing one of the award packages for my AMPS chapter. And so that's good dudes, should be a good show. They're doing gold, silver, bronze, which is awesome. And I know I will be there, and Jackson will be there, and hopefully we can convince some other people that we know to show up. So, yep. Go on, Jen. Sorry to interrupt.
No problem. Sounds fun. I wish I could make that one. And then again, I wish I could make all the shows. Then we have Scale Model Challenge in Eindhoven, October 14th and 15th. I know there's a lot of us going to that one. That's going to be an incredible show.
My flight is booked. I'm super excited.
Yeah, boy. And then we have MMSI, Chicago Marriott in
Schaumburg, yeah.
Schaumburg, October 20th and 21st. And then after that, until any other shows show up in between, we have Scale Model World, Telford, Shropshire, United Kingdom, November 11th and 12th. That is the equivalent of the UK Nationals. And yeah, for our calendar, that's all we've got so far, but I'm pretty sure more shows will pop up between now and then.
Well, thank you, Jensen. A lot of events. If you have an event that you'd like us to add to the calendar, hopefully we haven't missed any, but send those to Plastic Posse Podcast at gmail.com and we'll get them added to our calendar. Well, let's take a minute and hear a word from Bases by Bill, one of our awesome Posse sponsors. And then on the other side, we will get a Mac Group Build update from TJ.
The Triple P Mac Group Build is sponsored by Bases by Bill. Bases by Bill specializes in making beautifully crafted wooden custom display solutions for scale models. Built by modelers for modelers, these premium quality display cases and innovative base designs are available for just about any model and size. Their custom size display bases ranging from 4 to 30 inches provide the perfect foundation for dioramas and vignettes. And remember, if you don't see what you need, just ask. Chances are they can customize the perfect solution for you. Check out basesbybill.com and see their new custom display products for busts and figures. Use the code POSSE15 at checkout to apply a 15% listener discount to your order. Bases by Bill for all your model display needs. Cool, thanks, Scott. We'll do a quick little rundown through the group. I'll try to make it a little fast because I know Doug's mailbag is like bursting at the seams, and we got a lot of ground to cover there. So some things I just want to shout out. Scott Hall started working on his Nutcracker. He's putting lights in it, which God bless you, Scott. Lights are a lot of work. I've tried it once and it was like really hard. I'm like, I don't know if I'm ever gonna do this again. Our buddy Jeremy Moore has finally broken bags and started clipping sprues for his Mark 44. I know he was asking about how to replace the rubber hoses. So if anyone's curious, coil metal springs are what you use to replace the crappy, whatever that weird polycat material hoses are, which look, they're fine. They are. I have some that I have not replaced the hoses with springs. However, if that's the easiest things to do to up the fidelity of your machining career kit. It's not necessary, but they do look cool. Coil springs, Wave makes some, AK makes some now too, and you can find them in various other places. It's a little sidebar. Lynn Young has finished his Hornus and his Pilot, put it on a little base, looks really cool. Greg James is getting some paint on, I think is a Grosser Hunt. I'm not really sure. It's one of those. It might be one of the 5 different variants of it, but the bipedal robot, that's what it is. It's really cool. He's got a really cool color scheme. Joel Munson has put some paint on his Raccoon. It's like a dark, ruddy brown with like a tan camo over it. It's really neat. And of course, we can't not mention Cliff Herring's Mark 44. He's got the pin washes done. It looks great. And I think he is going to be starting the weathering soon. So that's pretty much all I got. Remember, if you want to join the group build, just search Plastic Posse Podcast Machining Career Group Build. It'll pop right there. Just go ahead and join. Post your machining career kits. And if you're coming to Texas, bring one with you and put it on our display table. I know I will have a bunch. I'm sure most of you guys will have something. And yeah, that's what we got.
All right, mine will be ready. How about some feedback? Are we ready for this?
Send it.
All right, I'm going to start with Mike Bird. Mike Bird is a great guy. Listen to what he did for us. He said, "Hi, Posse. I've enjoyed your recent episodes, especially the interview with Kit, as I'm also a Microsoft employee and was able to contact him over work email to say hi. I was listening to the most recent episode and I couldn't help myself by registering loungetrousers.com, HTTP, let's loungetrousers.com, and setting it up to redirect to the merch store. It's up to you if you want to use it, which we do. But it might save yourself from saying hyphen so much. Also happy to transfer. Yeah. So that's what he's done for us. I just kind of blew my mind that somebody would be that thoughtful and to think just how can I help save them a little time and everybody for to be able to find it easy. Loungetrousers.com.
Well done, Mike. It's always good when you have some Microsoft guys in your corner.
So, Kid Headley said, listening to the episode now, thanks to David. Is it Waples or Wapples?
I think it's Waples.
I'm pretty sure it's Waples.
David Waples for the additional lines on antenna wire options. I just found and ordered a box of Austerlitz insect pins the size of double-aught, that's smaller than one, on Amazon. I also looked those up, and yeah, they're not very expensive. And then David Bridges loved episode 70. Nice to hear amps get some love. It's a shame that amps is not bigger than it is, because it's really a wonderful organization that puts on a great show. I've been a judge, table captain, and assistant chief judge at numerous amps shows. I'm grateful to hear such good feedback from TJ about his experience. It's not a perfect system, but they're on the right track. Also, congrats to Jackson and Grizz on their success at the show. Winning Best of Awards at amps is an achievement, and to do so at so young of an age is very impressive. And getting a 30.5 score is also no small achievement. So great to see new talent like those guys clearing up at the big shows. And for the record, TJ was right. Perfect Dark was better than GoldenEye. I'd also die on that hill. The briefcase gun was the shiznit. Can we say shiznit on the show?
This is where I would put the gif of Michael from The Office slapping the table going, "Thank you," because yes, all of that is true. The briefcase gun is awesome. Go on, Doug.
All right. We'll go to Jared Cowell, who's a devoted deputy marshal. Bravo on a fantastic episode with number 70. I particularly enjoyed the robust discussion about the amps judging system. Though new to the hobby, I quickly became aware of the spirited debates surrounding amps or IPMS versus amps, evaluation and scoring systems. I won't bore you with my reasons or for my preferred method, but I thought I'd offer some perspective from one of my other hobbies, which is music. I am a classically trained trombone player, having joined the band program in elementary school and ultimately going on to spend 2 years studying music at an undergraduate conservatory. All that to say, in my experience competing, exhibiting as both a soloist and member of an ensemble, like an orchestra, the scoring system in music performance is nearly identical to amps, with the juried exposition approach. As a matter of fact, at the conclusion of every year in conservatory, each musician is evaluated by faculty in a performance called a jury. For the sake of brevity, you guys are quite popular after all. His words, not mine. I think it's important that we look outside of our beloved hobby for inspiration on competition and performance. Don't use big words, man. I got to read this. Adjudication. Did I say that right? Is it close?
Yeah.
The process of training Western musicians hasn't changed much in centuries, and it's produced scores of world-class talents. I'm sure there are other hobbies too, which we could turn to when considering this debate in the context of scale modeling. If you'd ever be interested in discussing the topic in greater detail, I'd be more than happy to chat. You guys are the best, and I'm clearly looking forward to episode 71. That was a big one, and I'd love to talk to someone about their experiences in other areas and what they've been able to see and learn from other hobbies and other pursuits.
Yeah, agreed. And I'm glad he liked our last episode. I thought TJ really captured the spirit of Amps Nationals, and obviously echo his congratulations for Zach and Grizz and TJ and everybody who did well at the show. But I just say moving forward, we're big fans of Amps. TJ and myself are both involved in chapters that we've created recently, and we plan on more Amps content in the future. So we're big fans.
I'm actually the president of my amps chapter that I didn't even run for, was voted for, which I was going to mention earlier. And I totally forgot. So yeah,
well,
amps rules.
Congratulations.
Yes, my tyrannical reign has begun.
All right, our next novel is a nice letter from John Everett, our good friend. He says, thanks, gents, for speaking at length about nurturing young talent within our hobby. Yoda once said to an aging Luke Skywalker, "We are what they grow beyond. That is the burden of all masters." And now, well past the middle of my life, it might be entirely possible that I have already constructed my best work, my peak kit, as TJ referenced a few weeks ago. But I have also observed within myself a strong interest, even a joy in seeing far better efforts than I have ever done being completed by builders half my age. Their creations become even more enjoyable if I know that I might have had some measure of positive impact during the early stages of their learning. There is also a point at which each of us must pass the torch. So as long as those whom we entrust our hobby to understand its real meaning, which is its social gathering, its collected ideas and techniques as an underlying philosophy, then we know that our hobby will be well tended. In short, trust the young. Trust that they may do things differently, and that's okay if they do.
If the goal of IPMS or any other formal organization is to increase its appeal and thus its membership participation, then it must acknowledge that new and sometimes scary things like science fiction robots and components printed from goo are just as genuine and valid and worthy of respect as are the people who build them. It is folly to be fearful of those new ideas, these new genres, these new people. Fear is the mind killer. Fear is ultimately leading to suffering. Embrace the Gundam, the wooden ship, the cardboard bulldozer. For each of them is merely a variation of our oldest traditions. They should be celebrated and not excluded or demeaned. At the end of the day, passing the torch, constructed from kindness and inclusion, will light the way to our future. If we choose to pass forward only misery, only a miserly torch made from limits and prejudice, we will only serve to burn our house down. We must be gentle and helpful and encouraging because we will spend the whole remainder of our creative lives with these new modelers. That was from John Everett.
That's why John Bonani has the acronym WWJED. What would John Everett do? Enough said.
All right. Martin Holst. Hi, boys. Just listened to episode 70 and was sort of flabbergasted when you suddenly shouted me out for my Corsair. After picking up modeling again in 2022, podcasts like yours really helped me rediscover the hobby and marvel at all the wonderful stuff that's out there. It helped me become a better modeler than I thought I could be, and I just wanted to say thank you for all you do. It means a lot, and your nice words definitely boosted the mojo. Can we say mojo on this show? Sorry, it's a joke. Definitely look forward to hopefully meeting some of you in person at the Scale Model Challenge in October. And I really liked your discussion on amps and the judging system. Inclusion is key for the future of our hobby. And that fundamental attitude starts within ourselves. Cheers from Holland.
Thanks, Martin. He's a great guy. And big contributor to our posse group on Facebook. So keep up the great work, Martin, and hopefully TJ and JB and Jensen can sit down with you at some point over there.
One more from Jake Kidd. Thanks so much for the extra content and discussion on other pastimes. I'm 45 with 2 young kids at home. And yes, Legos and video games are just as big in our house as plastic modeling. Building Legos was a routine pandemic activity for our family of 4, leaning heavy on Lego City and Star Wars themes. My home office displays share a mix of Lego and plastic scale models. Keep up the great content, and please don't fear exploring other topics. It's a good glimpse into your personalities. I'm in the Pax River, Maryland area, and an active member of the Southern Maryland Scale Modelers, trying to make it to Nets, but looks like the summer schedule is full and other demands may keep him from going. It'll be a last-minute decision. He was glad to see GoldenEye ported over and re-released this winter on the current gen platforms. And yes, I expect my bench time to take a real hit when Diablo 4 releases. If you're looking for a game party, I'm on Xbox as JJ Danimal. Yeehaw! And then once again, we'd like to thank everybody for your participation on the Plastic Posse Facebook page. Please come over. If you haven't been there, come check it out. You can share work. You can see the work of others, give your feedback, receive feedback, and have a lot of fun sharing this glorious hobby. You can send your feedback to us at plasticpossepodcast@gmail.com and just hang out with us. And if you're over on the Plastic Posse page, you can see some really cool stuff, like Rudy Zimmerman's RX-65 gun tank. It's kind of a tracked gunpla almost. It's got big guns. It's very cool. And then Mike Gordy did an F-16 Viper in the 149th Fighter Wing Heritage Scheme, which is also very cool. Those are all just examples of things that you might find over there among dozens of others. So come give us a look.
Thank you, Doug. That's a lot of excellent feedback. Really appreciate everybody sending that in. Well, let's do our feature interview. We finally had a chance to sit down with Bill Huffman, Scale Model Craft on Patreon and Facebook and YouTube, and had an amazing interview. Bill is an incredible guy. He is a super passionate person who's equally adept at woodworking as he is at building dioramas. He puts insane amounts of detail and passion into his work, and I think you're really going to love this interview. So here we go. We are here today with my co-host and friend, Mr. Grant Mayberry. How are you doing today, Grant?
Good. Everything's going well out here in Southern California.
And we are also thrilled and honored to have a friend of the show with us today. He is a treasure. He is truly unique, and he's a modeler that combines every bit of modeling with other disciplines such as woodwork. He does fantastic work in the vertical, which is also kind of unique. His attention to detail is unbelievable. Bill Huffman, welcome to the posse, and we're excited to talk to you.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, guys.
As I mentioned, Bill's just an incredible modeler, and we're excited to kind of probe into kind of what makes him tick today and talk about his own modeling and his social media. So I'm going to turn the microphone over to Grant, and let's find out a little bit about who Bill is.
Bill does some really, really interesting work that we find very interesting. Like Scott said, he does a lot of work in the vertical, which is very unique for modeling in this, because most modeling we see today is in the horizontal dioramas and stuff like that. But Bill does a lot of bit of work in the vertical. My first question for Bill, though, is what brought you to that kind of style of building that kind of in the vertical idea?
Well, it really started with, I liked the underground element.
Okay.
And that's where it really began. I built my British command bunker, World War I British command bunker. And that was the first one where I did it, where I created a small room in the diorama. And that room had to be seen, from the side. And I really liked that. It allowed me to kind of capture that box diorama type of a feel. And I could control the light, and just all these things came out of that. And I really enjoyed that. And so then I started, I went into a multi-level, and I had another room inside. I would take it to our local IPMS show, and we would have a show and tell. And like myself, maybe some folks getting a little older, I saw these gentlemen like getting down on the ground to look inside of it. And I felt like a schmaltz. I was just like, what the heck, these poor guys are really wanting to see this. And they got to kind of stoop down. And I said, that's the end of that. And so I just built a riser. I built a riser so that you could actually see into it without having to bend over or, ask for help getting back up. And I really liked it. It added something else to the diorama itself. It became a little bit more of a thing. I don't know. The whole thing looked a little bit better for me. And since I really liked doing those little, deals inside, I just continued it. And I can foresee that I'm going to continue doing it because it's really fun. And I like people to discover things. And by putting those little chambers, putting those little rooms in there, it's an easy way to do that instead of just looking at the surface. And so, yeah, that's kind of how the height and the vertical thing came about.
Oh, that's great. That's great. Being an older gentleman myself, sometimes it does. It can't get down there. Sometimes it's a little harder to get it back up, as they say. These are the dioramas that you do, or some of them are just. I don't know where you get the idea, and is that. What is your process for those? Is it just a free flow? Just you start working on something and then you stick with a plan, or do you go in with it with like a diary? Yeah, you have it written out. You know exactly what you're going to do.
Yeah, it's really more of a things get revealed as I build. I typically have an idea, a very nebulous, not concentrated, and sometimes written down, very rarely written down. Like, oh, this would be cool, but I mean, it's just like maybe a rough sketch.
Right.
But that rarely ends up being the end article because I really like adapting. So when I go in, typically the first thing I'll do is I'll have a model in mind. On my Wolfenstein, I had Trumpeter's 132nd BF 109 with Hans Joachim Marseille markings. I love the plane. I love the story. I love all about it. And so I see that and I'm like, well, that would be really fun to have something, but I want an underground element. I have no idea where I'm going to go with that yet. I just want an underground element. And so I finished the model and I typically will get it to like the base coat, because I want to get an idea of what it looks like. I don't have to have all the markings. I don't have to have all the decals. I don't have to have anything like that. I just need to, its basic shape and its basic tone or color. So it just kind of works in my head. And then I'll start sculpting the ground. And when I do the ground, that's also something that I don't really plan out. I just kind of go and trying to sculpt it with foam is what I typically use for my groundwork. I try to sculpt it just so it's interesting looking in and of itself. Like when I was in the military, when you move into an area to set up, your perimeter or set up your position, you have to deal with the terrain. You have to deal with that. So I just literally imagine myself, I'm walking into this place and we got to build a camp. And that's all I do. As the diorama progresses, I try to feed off of it and say, well, that's really neat looking, and I'm really happy with that. But, what else would happen? Honestly, when people ask me, well, specifically, what do you do? Well, I just ask myself questions. I'm trying to fill it out, and I'm trying to be, present inside the diorama, not just in the moment, but literally inside the diorama. And I'm just outfitting a camp, if it's a camp scene, the way I would have it. If the bunker, I'm just like, well, if I were in a bunker, this is what I would have. I would have some personal items. I would have some, mission critical items. I would have something my mom sent me in a care package, if it's in a military setting, things like that. I just kind of think it out. What would you have? And if I want just more stuff, I don't just say, oh, here's a couple of barrels. Well, what do those barrels do? What's their purpose? Why would you have them in here? And it doesn't necessarily have to be something you would expect, but there has to be a pretty logical reason for it to be there. Putting something out of place, I think, in a diorama can really grab your attention, like why it's there. But it can't just be this nebulous thing of, there's this thing over there on its own and incongruent with anything else in the diorama. It has to somehow support the rest of the diorama. And so to do that, I kind of come up with a story, and I like to build these stories, based on whatever, but so that it ties the different elements of the diorama together so that they all flow. I don't think of a diorama as a snapshot, like a display or a vignette. I really see it as a story or something that I'm trying to communicate, and that's going to entail a flow. It's going to entail, people doing here, something that coordinates with people doing here. They maybe do completely different things, but there's a commonality. They're supporting the same thing, or they're doing something for these folks. I just try to run through those scenarios and then fill in the blanks that I come up with.
It's like sculptors talk about releasing a statue out of a piece of marble. They look at the rock and they see what's in there and they try to free it. This is really interesting. But how do you, I guess my question would be, you sort of establish your baseline and then you allow the piece to sort of speak to you and come to you. But how do you know when it's done?
Oh, well, that's a really big one, because previously, when I was working full time and all that kind of stuff, I would have multiple projects going on at once. I would have a lot of time between different, builds or something like that. Maybe a week. I getting home after work, we all know that, trying to get into something that it just sometimes just doesn't work. So you get that weekend, boy, you've been thinking all week what I'm going to do. Well, I believe, I don't know if this is true, but I believe that when you're not working on something that you're vested in, your subconscious is continuously working on it. And so that whole week, while I'm waiting to work on it, my subconscious is going through scenarios and looking at different things, and I could do this. And sometimes, stuff pops to the surface and you go, oh, and you mull it out. But I would come into a weekend with all these ideas because I haven't had the chance to work on it, and things would start to appear, and I would just do it. That really was great. But now that I'm doing this full time, because this is my only gig, to do these, I kind of have to put things in my way to slow it down, because I think if I go a little bit too much on one area, that could overwhelm the diorama, and I don't want that. I want this total story. I want you to move from one part of the diorama to the next. I don't want one element to just, this is really cool. And then this one's just like, nah, it just doesn't quite, fit, or it's not detailed enough, or it doesn't fit with the amount of detail here and things like that. And so these little breaks that I used to have during work during the week would help me. When I started doing it full time, I thought this is the best thing in the world. And it is, but I still have to give myself time to mull this stuff out. If I just go into it and say, by this afternoon, I'm going to have this finished, I don't think that's giving my brain or whatever, functionality is working up there enough time to come up with something interesting and really with the detail that I want. So nowadays, as I'm building these, I take big breaks. I'll go do yard work. We've got a pretty good sizable piece of property here. So I'll go out and do yard work for the day. I won't even work on it. And then I'll come back and that, I think, helps me come up with stuff that I'm not rushing to do. And I'm like, well, this could fit. I'll give it a try. I try to get that stuff worked out before I dive into the diorama again. So breaks help a great deal.
Oh, that's great. It's interesting to see that idea, the concept of first your difference between working and then doing it as a full-time project. That's very interesting. One of the things I really like about your work is the woodworking itself. That is you do such fantastic woodworking. Have you always been a woodworker? Did you start with your dioramas? Did you are you a woodworker? Yeah. So
and I'd always been I always loved miniatures and models and the old movies where Doug McClure, they're going to go to the center of the earth, but it always starts up in this lab, this beautiful, cool looking laboratory, right? And there's all this stuff in it. There's all these arcane looking mechanisms and models and miniatures of things. And I, from a very early age, I had that in my mind. I just love the aesthetic of it. And so when we bought our first house in 97, I got a table saw and took half of the garage, just boom. Half the garage is mine. We only had one car then. So I got half the garage and it stayed that way for 15 years. And I worked in the garage. I had never really done woodworking at that point, but I wanted to make Leonardo da Vinci models. I just love Leonardo da Vinci. I just love the things that he drew and all the stuff and the fantastical and everything. This man couldn't fly, but he built wings and drew wings and things like that. So I started woodworking in 97 with no teaching or anything like that, no experience in it, but I'm very mechanically inclined. My mind works that way. I can figure things out very well visually. And so I started building wooden models. And these wooden models were scale models of airplanes and ornithopters and Da Vinci wings and just a myriad of things. These little experiments that Da Vinci would draw. I imagine myself as a person in his time in maybe the village, and he says, hey, here's one of my drawings. And he's saying in Italian, which I can't speak, so it sounds a lot better. And he asked this craftsperson to build him something so that he can see his drawing realized. So that's where I place myself. I guess, a big theme here is I like to place myself in the situation, even when I'm building something. It's like two people talking. I drew this. I want you to build it as close to this as possible, but also make it work. So that's what I did. I started woodworking, building these little fanciful models that Leonardo designed. And then, of course, that helped me go into my own designs and things like that, develop from that. And I just started woodworking. Now, how modeling comes into it is I had modeled my entire life. I was not this is my only thing. Like a lot of my friends in the clubs, they decided at a very early age, maybe 6 or 8, that boy, modeling is it. That's what I'm going to do. To me, modeling was just a toy. I mean, it was just an option. You went to the toy store and you would go get a toy. Well, a model was an option and we'd bring it home and build it and blah, blah, blah. So models were always there. And so even while I was just primarily for 30 years, my primary passion and still a passion today is woodworking. I would just every once in a while, it's like, oh, this is just a really cool model. And I go build a model. And so that's kind of how I did that for 30 years, just kind of teaching myself. Norm Abram, the old New Yankee Workshop, that's where I learned woodworking, magazines. And I really enjoy woodworking. I see a shape, I see an article, I see something that excites me. I just want to build it. And my main thing was wood. When I got a little older, wood kind of had to tail off a little bit because of just some military injuries and things. You know, you get older, they start compounding, and it was hard to work with wood. It was so easy to just go straight into model and diorama building and then have my woodworking as a background really, really helped. The woodworking gave me the structure to understand how to build things to be believable, even in scale. A little tiny chair, a bookshelf, or whatever. For me, woodworking is still very much a part of it, though I don't do it as much. I still build smaller things, which I've always kind of done, built smaller things. And it just kind of melded into doing the woodworking both for a stand and for a presentation of a diorama, but also for the things that I put in my dioramas, because I do a lot of woodworking, furniture, whatever, for the diorama.
You know, I'm glad you brought up that sort of, I'm going to call it a conversation between Bill, the creator, and then Bill, the viewer, you know, as far as knowing as the story progresses, how it's going or when it's going to end. But I'm going to ask you a question about maybe potentially another conversation. If you were describing yourself to somebody, are you more a craftsman or are you more of an artist?
I've always shied away from artist. To me, it sounds presumptuous. Is that the right word? It seems a little bit too much. I look at artists and I'm amazed. And I look at some other artists and I go, you're an artist? You know, so it's so, or you call yourself an artist, and it's like, and I'm not dogging anything they create, because I think creation is really in the eye of the person that creates, the artist, if you will. And that's the only person you need to satisfy, period. To me, if you're a true artist, you're not painting, you're not sculpting, you're not doing anything else but for yourself. And it's wonderful if other people appreciate it. And that's where it ends for me, at least. That's how I think of an artist. Because I think of an artist, if you're trying to build something to impress someone else, I just don't think that the true essence of what you're trying to do is going to happen out there. I think you got to build for what you think. And then you've also got to be your best worst critic, or your worst best critic. What I mean by that is I don't think you should beat yourself up about what you build, but I do think you should be the most critical person about what you build, because everything that you build, or I say this I mean myself, anything I build is something that I'm going to criticize incredibly so that the next time I can do it better.
Yeah.
For me, it's a continuous process. I had a boss one time that had written a business book. I mean, he partially got, hired because of that business book. It was a good business book. It was nice. And I was talking to him about some of the business books that I read. And I like reading business books and things like that, self-improvement, whatever. And he goes, nah, I read 1,000 business books before we wrote our book. I'm done reading business books. And I was just rocked. I'm like, wow. So you know everything about business now? You know everything? It completely blew my mind. I'm not that kind of person. I am a kind of person that on my deathbed, I'll be like, man, I really need to get better at this. I really want to look into that. I mean, I'm interested in everything. The hard part is kind of keeping that interest focused in one direction. But I do think it's a good thing to continuously want to learn, continuously, critique your stuff, but also appreciate it for what it is, and understand that you wouldn't be able to get better if you weren't able to have done this, and then find something to improve and do it better the next time. So everything I do is great, but it's also, man, I can't believe I did that. Next time I got to do it better. So it's this continuous process. And that's what I did in business for 30 years too. I was in manufacturing and I worked for a software company. And what I would do is I would go in and I would talk to people and help our salespeople, because I supported our salespeople internally, and I would help them find a way for that person to improve their process. So my mind is always about improving process and primarily me improving my process. I'm constantly saying, like on my Patreon accounts and stuff like that, when we're doing our live streams and everything, look, the best idea wins. The best idea is the last idea, because as soon as everybody hears it, they're like, well, we're doing that. Well, that's the idea I want to go with. It doesn't have to be my idea because it's my idea. It needs to be the best idea. That's just that philosophical thing, helps kind of guide stuff.
It's perfectly matched to model making, right? Because model making is at its very core a replication of things in miniature.
Yep.
But yet really, really interesting modeling, as you've verbalized very, very well, involves a heavy degree of storytelling. Mm-hmm. And so you have this sort of, I love your miniature models of your woodworking equipment that you've done, but that's a very different piece than your Castle Wolfenstein, diorama, where, not only are you storytelling, but you're getting into sort of and I don't mean this in a bad way, the fantastical, right? It's something it's pushing creativity to entertainment levels and, visiting parts of the mind that are, intended for fun. And so, it seems like your personality is really well suited for this hobby in that way.
Yeah, I think so. I'm the guy that tells all the kids in the family. We never had kids, so our house, my shop, and our property up in the mountains and stuff, we would host all the birthday weekends, and it was fun because you could bring the kids here and they didn't have the structure from home. They didn't have all this kind of stuff. It's like, what do you want to do? Well, what are we going to do? No, what do you want to do? And it's not giving kids the power. That's not the point. It's giving kids the opportunity and the tools and the area and the space to just do whatever their mind can think of. And I really, really like that. I, to some degree, had that growing up. I was, we're of similar ages. I was of the group of kids that grew up without their parents at home after school, right? For us, if you came home without structure and destroyed the house, which I did a couple times, there was an orange throwing incident, which doesn't work out well at all. If you don't have a structure and you don't want to get in trouble when your parents do get home, you got to think of things to do. You got to use your imagination. We did things and we thought about things and we said, what if we would go out and, build stuff in the dirt? I don't see a lot of kids playing in the dirt these days. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing. I'm saying that was one of the things that I think helped nurture that kind of creativity, that kind of imagination that makes it fun and easy to come up with a story that can go along with what you're doing. It's just playing. It's just pure, unadulterated playing. And there's nothing wrong with that. Using your imagination, using the tools that you have, using the materials that you have, and you make something that you think of. What a wonderful thing that is, And then if somebody else likes it, holy cow, that's great. It's not necessary because you made it for yourself, like I was saying before, but just allowing your imagination to get out there and flex itself every once in a while, where we don't really have that as much anymore, I think is really great about diorama and model building. You can do that. You can put it in a situation. You can create your own situation. And from that, if it's compelling enough and you put enough information in there so that other people can read it without having anything verbal, that's kind of a trick. That's kind of a talent that you can develop just by knowing a few things. And that's the kind of the things that I'm looking to do.
Yeah, I agree. I was what they called it, lock latch kid or whatever the heck it was. But I was the same way. I would There was a couple incidents myself that we won't talk about that their stuff got destroyed. And, but, we all have those kind of incidents. And I do see, I do see the younger generations, that are modeling now, focusing more on what they were brought up with and how they were brought up. I see a good example is the younger kids that are working on Gundam because they were raised on Gundam or robotic, Star Wars, all this other stuff and they do these fantastic Gundam work. And you see and I actually envy some of the younger generations a lot because of what their paint skills are and how they can do that. I have never seen car modelers are another example of guys that are just fantastic with an airbrush. But Gundam alone too is another, and they have their own way and we have our own way. And that's just great. And the idea of bringing kids up and, telling them, what do you want to do is a fantastic idea. By telling somebody asking them instead of telling them, you'll get so much more, even with me, if someone says, you need to do this, yeah, I'll go do it. But if they tell me how would I do this, it'll be more productive and I'll be more behind it. And it still works to this day. We talked about a lot of different things here, but in your ideas, your dioramas, but let's just take a Wolfenstein, since we know that one. How long did that take? What was, was it a longer process? Did they take longer processes for you, or, give us an idea about that?
Well, it took 8 months to build, but that was when I had a bunch of other projects going on, and I actually took a long break to try to finish up those projects. I first started this thing, COVID happened, and I went into doing this. I've got this nice shop, and I'm thinking, well, this was the retirement, but we can do that now. So I started doing this, and as I started getting into building, I thought, well, I need to just make money, right? That's when you go into business for yourself, you got to make money. And I didn't consider what I was doing was hurting those efforts. So what I would do is I would take on all these jobs. I had like 5 jobs floating, right? And I'm like, man, this is just not going. So I just stopped my videos. I stopped my diorama building. I stopped pretty much everything and finished those projects. This was part of that. I stopped working on it and finished those other projects. And it took a while. Then I came back to it and dove right back in. And it progressed a lot faster. Well, on my current diorama, that's what I'm doing. I don't have any other projects. I have just one single project, and it goes a lot faster. The number one thing that I get asked, and it's something I have to really work on, is how much, just like you're asking, how much time did it take? And I honestly don't know.
Right.
I may work on a single part for a day. And I think a lot of us do that. You're working on something that is so important that, or it's such a key element to the story. You want to get it right. And it's not a part you can buy. It's not a part you can print. I don't do a lot of CAD stuff. I worked in CAD CAM. The software company I worked for was a CAD CAM company for 23 years. I don't do any CAD today because of that. I like being away from it, and I like scratch building. So I'm doing all these things to kind of get this going and get it running and get it built, that I don't really think, oh, that was 4 hours, or that was a half an hour, or that was just 15 minutes, But I honestly think I need to start doing that, because it is the number one question I get. Yeah. And I unfortunately don't have a good answer, because I'd like to give people a good answer. I'm just so frenetic in my thought processes. I'll be walking around the shop, not working on the model, and I'll go, oh, I got to work. I do this, these little epiphanies hit, and I got to work on that. And I don't tally it, but they do take a long time. And I think if I try to speed them up, I'm doing myself a disservice, because it is those pauses, it is those breaks, it is that walking away from it that allows me to get a little bit slowed down in what I'm doing. It's just like when you're painting chips, right? You're chipping something. You're on that fender and you're in it, man. The only thing that's in your view is that fender, and you got the jar of paint right there, and you got a little bit of thinner, and that's it. That's your world right then. And then you stand up and you're going, oh my gosh, I went way over. Well, that same scenario can happen when I'm building the diorama. And so I can't concentrate on one element. So I'll do something and then I'll just get up and stand back. And that stand back could be a week. I'm not working on it, but I am, because I've got to figure this out. There's things that I run into because there is no plan. There is no initial, I need this part, I need that part. This is going to go there. That's going to go there. I refer to my CAD drawing. Some folks do beautiful CAD drawing stuff. They refer to that. They go back to their original. None of that happens with me. It is an absolute organic process that as I'm building, I get those ideas fueled by what I've already built upon. And I want to either enhance that or possibly even change the direction of the story because I've added an element that previously was not even thought of. So that makes it exceedingly difficult to figure out how long it takes to work on it, but I'm trying. I've got an idea of how to do it and how to tag that and stuff like that. We'll see if it works. Because I'd love to answer folks and say it is this many hours, because that could be impressive in and of itself that you've dedicated all that time. And
but I think you're the way you explained it just now is more impressive than telling me 14 or 15 more hours, because you're showing your flow of how you work on things. And I think a lot of people are actually looking for an idea how to work on a flow of work, especially, like you stated that sometimes you step back, and sometimes that step back is a week. That's to me, that is fun from what I've done in the past. I have to do that. Not saying everybody has to do that, because it just becomes to a point where if I start rushing myself or something like that, I get flustered, and then I know I'm going to mess up, and then I back off, and I'm fine. And that's like I said, though, I think your explanation for that question is perfect, because you're showing your process, and that's very important. We all have these ideas about this has to last this long, this has to, and people that do this for a living, like yourself, they do charge. And they have to figure that out. And there's some people that, that are very strict about that. But seeing that, it makes it, to me, it opens up a whole new approach to the design and the feeling of building, especially with your kind of work with dioramas and stuff like that. That's, to me, I find that very, very, very expressive and design, Do you find when you come back that you are refreshed more and ready to go, or is there's a little bit of stalemate there before you start back up?
I think I typically come back when I've got the idea, when that thing hits. Not all the time.
Right.
And sometimes I'll just work on something completely different. And you guys have had, I think it was episode 68, great episode, by the way. And you were talking about motivation, or you were talking about, keeping that motivation going, getting out of the doldrums, or you see something super impressive in it and it kind of gets you down. Building a base, building a diorama, building a vignette, whatever you want to call it, by having a secondary element to what you're building, to me, helps me with that motivational process, because I can still be working, quote unquote, in the game, right? I've got this project. This is my project right now. It happens to be a Tiger one. And because I'm going to couch it in Germany near the end of the war, whatever the case may be, there's some thought that needs to go into that. There's also needs some thought that goes into the Tiger, but I'm at the point where on the Tiger that I've not got it. There's something that's missing. It's not complete yet. So I just switch over to the diorama. I'm still in that world. I'm still trying to make these connections. I'm still trying to satisfy the story that either I've made up, or I got an idea and I'm trying to satisfy the story. I'm trying to build this to the story that I have, or the story's changing because of what I'm doing, whatever the case may be. I'm working in that world, but not on what I was doing. I'm just done with painting today. I can't do any more. My hands are, I did that one slip, you go to get to the paint and the tip of the wing just gets this long, dragged out paint mark of like the completely wrong paint. And it's Tamiya, it's not coming off. Stuff like that, I try to stay away from, because it's happened. And that is fatigue. And it's not working fatigue, because I got plenty of hours left in me for the day or the weekend or whatever the case may be. It's fatigue on that process. I'm too into it. I'm too much on it. I've got too much invested, and it's overwhelming, and I can't quite do it to the way I want. I think you need a little bit of freedom in what you're doing. I don't think you can be completely constrained. I don't want to be modeling where I feel like there's this big hand, clutched around me saying, you got to get this done. And that hand is time, right? It's always time. I got to get it done for the show. I got to get it done for the broadcast. I got to get it done for the live stream, whatever the case may be. That brings on fatigue for that process for me. And I can't deal with it. I don't want it. So I just move. to something else. Sometimes I move away from the diorama, but now that I'm working on it like that, there's so many different elements to it, with the stand, with the diorama, with scratch building, with kit bashing, with all of the things that I'm doing in that. It becomes a real full scale operation that I can move around in and do something to get rid of that fatigue, because I want to work on it, but I just can't do that chipping right now. It's going to really mess the whole thing up if I stick doing that. So for me, motivation isn't based on something else. It's something that I have a lot of motivation in me, because people say, what's my next thing? For me, it's not a deciding of a blank room of nothing and you're trying to fill the room. For me, it's opening the door and keeping stuff from falling out and consuming me. So I'm trying to work on the other side. I'm trying to keep the motivation from making me jump into something else, because, man, I get ideas and my shop is built that way, right? My shop is set up so I could just walk right up to a piece of machinery, grab some material, whatever the heck it is, and I can start doing it. And I do that a lot. So for me, it's trying to meter things. It's trying to keep things at bay sometimes so I can focus instead of trying to find a motivation. I'm getting off subject and I tangent a lot, as you know. When this whole thing came around during COVID and I got asked to come back to my job, I had left and I looked at it and I said, you know what? I was pretty darn successful in business, right? Got me able to do what I'm doing now and take my time and make sure it's right. Well, it was that ask to come back that really made me think, what do I, as a person, all my capabilities, what's the best thing I do? What's the number one thing that I do? What's the thing that I am most proficient at of all the things that I'm capable of doing? And that's a big question. That old, your parachute book from the 90s and all that kind of stuff. What's the color of your parachute? I sat back and I said, you know what? I mean, they offered me a lot of money. And I'm like, man, should I? And I'm like, no, because even though I was successful in business, the thing that I'm best at, the number one thing I am best at, is making stuff, just creating. And there's not a lot of money in it right now. I do consulting and it's great. I've got Patreon and I got people that call me up and we get online and it's a paid consult and I love it. And it's really fun because I get excited about their diorama as much as my diorama. Right. And so we figure out what they're going to do. And it's just this really great moment at the end of that call, and they're going, oh my God, that's what I wanted to do. Or they figure out an element that they couldn't figure out before. That's why I'm doing this now. Because though I had those moments in business in figuring out how I could, help somebody in improving their manufacturing line or their laser cell or their oxy cutting or whatever the case may be, it's not as big as like, this is so personal to me about how to build a diorama or about how to tell a story or about how to configure your idea into something solid, that I get more out of that than I did from the satisfaction of doing my professional job that I did for years and the money. Both of those things together aren't as big as the thrill of someone saying, wow, that's what I wanted to do. And they didn't know that before they got on the call. That's the great thing. They had no idea some of the things that we come up with. And I'm not telling people what to build, right? I'm just helping them see the idea in its finished form or close to that finished form that they wanted to put on paper. I used to tell my salespeople, I would train new salespeople coming in and things like that to our organization. And I used to tell them, you want to be like a comedian. And they're like, what the hell are you talking about? Well, let's look what a comedian does, right? A comedian stands up on stage in front of people just like themselves, and they give you ideas of things that you understand, but they do it in a different light. They give you an idea about something that you fully understand, but you never saw it that way. And because you're so familiar with it, number one, and they give you a different perspective, number two, it's funny. Well, a salesperson's the same thing. A salesperson has to go into an environment of someone who has built their business from the ground up most times, right? They've got processes, they've got things, they know their business intimately. And then you come and go and, well, what about that? And you open it up for them. You just give them that last idea that says, oh my gosh, there's that 10%, there's that 3% that we were looking for in improvement. And that's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to give folks that 10%. That really brings it together. You know, athletes, when they're training, right? You're a runner and you're the number 2 guy in the world. Well, what makes the number 1 guy? Less than a second. So if you want to be the top of what you're doing, you want to be the best at what you're doing, and you're pretty close, it's not changing everything that you do. It's finding that 3%. It's finding that half a second. That's all you need to be the best.
Yep.
Right. So all I want to do is help people find that 10%, find that 1%, find that one thing that was maybe missing in their idea that they couldn't quite conceive of themselves. They didn't know the process. They didn't know the material. They didn't know the thing that would kind of tie it all together. Now, I'm not like the Oracle. I can't find that stuff for you, but talking to people, we do find it. That's amazing. And like I said, it's better than the things that I did in my professional life, even compounded with the money. That is wonderful.
Yeah, I
just, that's the greatest.
Preaching to the choir, bud. You know, it's beautiful. I read an article many years ago from Shep Payne, and he did the same thing. He would take it, and he did consulting work, and he did work for Tamaya and all these other people. Mm-hmm. But he would take it to the next level and tell the story and help people find the story and what he was by little tiny things in a diorama that told the story. It's just odd little things, but that's what you have to do that. And, that's it. To hear it like this is, for someone like me, it is mind opening. And I'm an engineer by heart. I'm an engineer myself, and I see it every day. But when you don't get the verbal of it sometimes, which I think is missing in the engineer world, where it's not a verbal communication world, it's more computer and do this, that. But when you hear it like this, it's very, very important. And, I do appreciate what you just said. And the concept of that 1 second, you don't change everything to get that 1 second. No. You change. It's just the minute things, and that's you hit the nail on the head, and that rotates back into modeling, in my opinion, because it's not just because you're getting seconds or something like that. It's not your process or what you're doing is wrong. You just need to find that one little thing that will push you over the top. And, and that's just what, guys like you help people like me do. And you help us by doing that. And then, it is very, very much appreciated, and I've been talking a lot, but I'm going to ask one more question, and then I'm going to let Scott ask some questions. Sorry, Scott, I don't mean to be stepping on all over you today. I don't know if we've covered this or not, because we've talked a lot about a lot of different stuff. But when you get in that zone, I know this happens to me, and I want to know if it happens to you. And I know it happens to others. We've talked about it with others. But do you kind of lose track of time? You lose it, and you're just so focused and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
There is a zone. There is and people talk about it a lot with sports, right? Or with writing, but it's really anything. In my professional career, it was spreadsheets. I was a spreadsheet guy, I did data mining and stuff like that. And I would lose my time in spreadsheets. You do it here too, right? And losing time is sometimes one of the best things, because it tells you that you're not concerned with anything else. All your focus is on what you're building. And when you come out of that and you're like, oh my gosh, this amount of time has expired or something like that. There's nothing wrong with it. It's sometimes a little bit, wow, that was great. But then you're always trying to find it again. That's that's a little weird, because you're like, man, I was just doing this so well yesterday because I put the paintbrush down and I closed it up. It's 2:00 in the morning. I can't do it no more. I'm making mistakes. And then you get back in the next day and you're like, man, I can't find it.
Yeah, searching for that high.
It's hard. I need to bang an endorphin here and it's not happening. And you're just like, where's it at? But, you just got to let it happen, because I've tried to force it and I just have to put the paintbrush down and go work on something else.
It's interesting. You talk about creativity in that vein. I listen to a lot of other podcasts, and I listened to a podcast with Rick Rubin, the music producer. I've talked about this a little bit, but this idea of creativity as the muse, whether you're a musician or you're an artist or you're a poet or you're an author, searching for that moment and everything is what anyone who's creative does. And so I guess my next question for you is, you're a pretty inspiring guy. Your work inspires a lot of people. And you mentioned a couple of things, but what feeds your muse? What's something that is really inspirational that when you see it, it just starts the gears going and makes them go into overdrive?
It comes down to, I think, what I appreciate, which helps, motivate me and inspire, is a skill. Not the finished article is one thing, right? But because I and we and a lot of modelers deal in minutia, it's the minutia that really excites me and really inspires me. And it's typically around technique. How somebody did, a rusted hull. How they did that motivates me to understand how they did it. Can I do it? I'm impressed by something and I want to do it. If I see someone that they're just highly skilled at one area, I take that from them. I don't take everything that they do. I don't try to mimic someone's style. I try to get inspired by a specific thing they do. Night Shift is a huge inspiration. Right as soon as COVID hit and I really started getting into social media and looking at these things, I discovered Night Shift and the number one thing. Well, this was in 2019 because I was doing my British bunker where I had the Mark V tank, and I didn't know the first thing about chipping. I mean, I knew what it was, but I didn't know how to do it. And I saw his video that says, don't do this. And he's chipping that little square panel. He was just brilliant. I loved what he did with a model. I appreciated his painting, but the number one thing I like about Night Shift, other than his voice and how he, just speaks, he's just a wonderful communicator, of course, was chipping. This is chipping. That's it. Boom. Stop right there. I like his welds and how he does welds. I like how he does Mr. Surface. I like all of those things, but for Martin Kovac, it's chipping. Done. That's what I've taken from him. It's not to say that there's not more. It's not to say that I don't watch his video, because I do. I love watching his stuff. But the number one thing that comes to mind from him is that one process, and it literally is a process, because what I'm trying to do in my life really is learning how to do stuff. That's it. I'm not a big memorization guy. I don't like memorizing things. I was at the museum yesterday, and guys are like, oh, this, all these facts and stuff. I know none of them. I can't tell you what engine was in a Tiger 1. I can't. I don't know the variance between the 60s, the M60s. I don't. That stuff doesn't register. What registers is how that tank was manufactured, how they cast the drive wheel, right? And then machined it. That's the stuff I pick up on. And that's motivating to me, because then I can see, well, I can make that, and when I'm saying I can make that, or I'm inspired to do something, it's how I'm physically going to do it. Not, oh yeah, I could do that. No, it's I'm going to do that and I'm going to figure it out. One of the biggest things that motivates me is a problem. And typically it's a problem that I create because I don't have a plan. I don't have, plans to go from for what I'm building, even the woodworking I'm doing. So I don't have that to look back on and have all these problems solved for me. I've got to solve those problems when I find them. And so I will work myself into a corner constantly. I mean, it's not like, on this, I work myself into a corner. No, those corners and those dead ends are constant through everything that I'm building on this thing because I don't have a plan and I love figuring stuff out. So a lot of times it's somebody that's figured out something that I haven't yet. Right? I've just never figured that out. I saw somebody do it, but I haven't figured it out yet. Or they're doing it and I want to do it the way they do, or I've done it different, but they're doing it better. That's the stuff that really gets me. And I don't care where it comes from. It does not matter. I don't care about pedigree because, Bill Nye said it a number of years ago, but I've been saying it for years because somebody told me, I don't know when, the dumbest person I know knows something that I don't. And that thing that they know that I don't is useful, right? So every single person out on the planet knows something that I don't. I'm just here to figure out what that is, and I'm not just trying to take from people. I'm not trying to take people's knowledge. I want to give it back as much as I can. That's what, my show and all that kind of stuff is about. But to find a new process, to find a new way to do something, to find somebody that knows something that I don't, well, it's just the greatest thing ever. I don't get mad that somebody figures out something. I'm like, dang it, they got it. Let's do it. That's really motivating and super inspiring. Martin Drayton.
Yep.
I love the way that gentleman thinks. And I don't know how he thinks. I just see the results of his work, obviously. But the fact that he does things in his dioramas that I would tend toward is one of the things that I love. He'll put something in his diorama that is completely incongruent to everything else, but it does fit. The parrots on the P-38, the washed up on shore P-38, they're brilliant. It's just brilliant, and other modelers may or may not have thought of that, but he did. And that's beautiful. That's just a wonderful thing because it draws your eye in. You know what it is. There's immediate recognition of the article or the thing or the whatever. So you're not going, what is that? And then passing by, you know what it is, but why is it here? And it makes you interested. Guys like that he's super impressive.
He's fearless too. What I admire about Martin is, well, I'm a flight attendant. I'm always on the road. I'm in hotels. I don't care. I'm going to do it anyway. This guy will, and he doesn't overthink things.
No.
He produces an incredible volume of work because he's fearless. He just does it.
Yeah. His dragon that he just did a few weeks ago. It's beautiful, right? And I've never seen him do a dragon. I've never seen him do anything fantasy, really. He did some zombies before, and those were great, but that was it. And then he does this dragon, and it was just beautifully done. The guys climbing the spire was just brilliant. So yeah, I love that kind of thing. And those folks just, because he can change direction, but he's got the base skills to do whatever the heck he wants. That's very impressive. I love that. I aspire toward that. No matter what you put your hands on, you can make something of it. I think that's a very wonderful thing.
Well, let's keep going down this path. When you are consuming social media, you've talked about our favorite uncle, Martin, of course. Aside from Martin, when you're on social media, say YouTube, what is it that you're consuming? Are you again seeking out those technique specifics? Or are you looking at like a Plasmo? Or are you looking at maybe like a Boile Hobby Time where they're really getting out there as far as creativity? What are some things that you're looking for?
So this is weird. I don't watch that many builders. I don't watch as much diorama and model building stuff. It's weird. I seem to consume historical stuff. I look at castles. I'm sure, I would imagine that's not what you're looking for, but that's the honest truth. I really honestly don't look at it too much. I like to look at finished articles now, but what I'm a little concerned with is adopting someone else's style because I'm so enamored of it. And I've done that before because of my Da Vinci stuff. I was building wooden models based on what Da Vinci does, but that's his stuff, right? And I love it, but I don't want to. I don't want to go too heavy into somebody's style. I want to pick up that one little bit of minutia that they do particularly well, like Martin's chipping, or the fact that Martin Drayton does, these little incongruencies that are so well done. So I like to pick that stuff up, and I will watch those things, but I spend a heck of a lot of my time consuming history stuff. I love looking at history stuff, love World War II, love ancient European history, love Southeast Asian history. I like looking at those things because it gives me ideas, and it tells me how people, maybe did things. And I don't know how, but there's some mechanism at work in here that brings some of that information into my dioramas. I mean, when I'm building a story for my dioramas, it's not necessarily based on the vehicle or the main model. The main model, okay, first off, I don't build dioramas to show off the model, first off, right out of the bat. It's not. What I'm building a diorama to do is show you a scene. And the model is purely, it's no more important than a figure or a plant, because they all have to go together to show a story. And so I'm not really wanting to see someone else put together their story, because I don't want to take any of their elements. What I'm more interested in watching is what they did on this individual thing. One of my great influences is Barbarossa models. He's fantastic, right? And I had the idea early on that he plans his stuff out and stuff, but I did find in texting and things like that he does do a little bit like I do, where it's a progressive thing, and there is this natural evolution, and he does get ideas, though his are a little bit more solid before he starts building than mine. I love that. I just love the technique of him starting off pretty well, ready to do what he's going to do, but then he does minor changes along the way. I do it a little differently. I do major changes along the way, and will really change the entire outlook sometimes of my diorama from the original idea. He doesn't, but there are aspects of what he does, again, small aspects of what he does, that I do think are great. And it's those little things. It could be his groundwork, which he does brilliant groundwork, Barbarossa models, or it could be that he worked on something first and this second. I mean, to me, it always comes down to process, how people do stuff more than what they do. I'm impressed by what they do, and that will get me into what their process is, but I'm really interested in their process. And I think conversely, that's what I'm trying to get back to other people, is how I do stuff. Now, I don't think I was doing that well previously in my videos and things like that, but I had a chance to speak to Rick Lawler, and he said, you've talked about your philosophy, you've talked about this, you talked about that. It was a great conversation, by the way. But he said, you know what? Now show them, how to do it, not what you did. Don't show them what you did, show them how you did it. Because I was showing in my videos what I did. And I forgot that what really motivates me is how people did it, not what they did. So now I'm changing my videos to show how I did it instead of what I did. So that's really, great to see, a great modeler. And number one, taking the time to tell me that was wonderful. Just to spend a little time with somebody coming up, and he's very well established and a massively influential person, to just, give me a few things of advice. And I love that. So yeah, I really, when I'm looking on, internet and stuff like that, I know people that it's like, man, I'm always looking at models, and I'm always looking at dioramas, and this is my niche, and I'm just all over the place, and I'm getting these ideas from everywhere, and somehow that brings into what it is. I want a broad view. I don't want a singular view. I don't want to go down the path, right? And there's all these things going out here on the periphery, but I'm on my path, boy, and I'm just going that way. No, I'm not that person. I like to see what's on the periphery. I will take a minute off of my path, and I will go over there and check it out. And then I get back on my path. But I like a broad mix of information coming in that I can then disseminate and do something with.
Yeah, that makes total sense with what you value, because you're a story first modeler. That makes all the sense in the world. And plus, you're looking for, when you are looking for collaboration, you're looking for technique specific collaboration to feed your narrative. And that's totally understandable, and echo, what you said about Rick. I mean, Rick just contributes so much to so many people. He's a great friend. And again, just somebody that I admire and love what he does. But anyway, okay. So coming back to collaboration, let's talk about Scale Model Craft in your channel. Recently you've started that up. It's terrific. I'm one of your Patreons. I love it. So encourage everybody else out there to give this a look as they hear this interview. But tell us a little bit about what your motivation was for starting Scale Model Craft, and you've talked about it a little bit, but what you're trying to share with others.
Thanks. Yeah, it came out of trying to figure out what I wanted to do, and the Scale Model Craft. When I first started this, I was going to do woodworking. That was my gig, right? I did it. I loved building models, but I was going to do woodworking. But when I really got into it, I started building videos on my channel, and it was Scale Model Craft because I wanted to try and encapsulate everything that I do, right? I do woodworking, I do metalworking, I do plastic, I do foam, I do all these things, and I think they're quite interesting to me, but they are a little bit broad. And for YouTube, they like a focus because the algorithm wants to go ahead and pick up something that's consistent. I'm the most inconsistent person you ever want to meet. So that was a difficulty, but I had done maybe 40 videos, and primarily on woodworking. And I did one video about, oh, by the way, I do dioramas. Well, when that came up, my woodworking videos were starting to grow and starting to do well. And maybe I had like 600 views or something like that. That was a good one. 300 to 200 or 50 were better, what I would usually get on my other videos. And then I did this diorama video. Bang. I mean, there was no question that people preferred my dioramas over my woodworking. So for a while, I did both, and I promoted and did more of my dioramas and stuff, but I always got a lot more feedback for that. And feedback is important, right? I'm not doing it for someone else. I said that earlier. I'm doing it for me, right? But there is an element of, I do want other people to appreciate it because it is a business at this point. This is what I do for my business. And to promote the consulting part of it, I had to be able to get enough feedback to make sure that I am getting out things that people are wanting to consume. And happily, it's not something that I had to change to meet that requirement. The only thing I had to do was concentrate on what I already do, which was a nice fit, right? I didn't have to, I'm not, I saw all this stuff about YouTube, and if you want to be a YouTuber and you want to be an influencer and you want to do your own blah, 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 blah. And they're saying, well, if you want to do it, you do t-shirts, or you do on-demand printing, or you do blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, look, I'm not doing this to make money. I want to make money at it, to support it, but I'm doing it because it's my passion, right? I said it before, this is the best thing I do. This is the best of my capabilities, all boiled into one thing, is this. And so that's what I'm trying to do on YouTube. I'm trying to show people what I do. I'm trying to show them that there is a way to do what I do. And I'm trying to knock down barriers because I had barriers doing this. I worked for 30 years in manufacturing, right? When my passion was this, doing dioramas, woodworking, and creating, right? Telling stories. I'm not a writer, but I've got this very, very detailed story in my head. Well, I used all of those skills and capabilities in my business life, but it was still not what I really wanted to do. So I had barriers that I couldn't break down. I'm trying to show people that, look, my story is this, it's not your story, but I was able to break down those barriers. It was a little bit more happenstance that maybe I had thought. Like I had a plan that, I'll work up until retirement, and at retirement, then I'll do my shop. That's what the shop was built for, because I'm not a person that can sit. I can't retire and go, let's go travel. No, I got to be doing something in my shop. So finding that out, maybe later in life, I want people that watch my channel to find that out earlier in life. I don't want them to change their vocation. I don't want to do it, but I want them to know that if you do have a passion and you do have something that really needs to be expressed, let it out. And if you can't let it out fully, like I'm doing now, there is a story like I had where I did it for 30 years and I got pretty good at it for 30 years, and then I was able to do it. So if you're not a situation where you can do this full time, that doesn't mean that it's over, that I just got to, get back to the slog. It means that you can do it on the weekends. You can do it sometimes on weeknights, but there may be a point in the future where you can do it all the time. And I think hopefully that's a good message. Hopefully that's a good story to get across. I'm not schooled, educated, learned in the fields that I'm doing. These things were all discovered, right? And if I can do it, not everybody can do it. I hate it when people say, oh, you can do it, anybody can learn it. No, you have to have the mental capacity, the right kind of thought process. You have to have some of that stuff. If you're a very A-type person, it may not work for you, right? You have to be a very creative person, but anybody can take that passion and try to make it their primary. I was able to not work in my full passion, but use those skills from my passion in my work life to build up enough so that I can do this now without having to worry about the financial ramifications of it for quite some time. But I do want to make money at it. That, I think, is a good message. You don't have to be a starving artist. I wasn't. We lived very well while I learned my craft and stuff like that. So there is a path there for somebody who doesn't think that they have the opportunity to satisfy something. And for me, it's very personal, exceedingly personal. My father was an artist. He never got to work in it. To his dying day, he never got to be an artist. He taught me how to draw as a kid. He drew a triangle, a circle, and a square. And he said, make the triangle a cone, make the circle a ball, and make the square three-dimensional. And do it with shading. Don't add anything to it, just shading. And that was my very first lesson in drawing. And my dad didn't teach me to draw. That was it. That's all he did. But then through observation, blah, 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 I got to do it. Well, my father, he's no longer with us. He did not get to do that for his life, right? And there's a sadness there that I don't want somebody else to have. I think it would be wonderful if people realize that, yeah, there's this slog and there's these things that we got to do, but I can have another life. I can do this thing. And then at the end of the professional stuff, I could maybe go into it, or I could satisfy it on the weekends, whatever the case may be. You can do these things, because I told myself from fear of losing my job previously, I couldn't do it. I told myself that. And that's not good. Thankfully I didn't stifle it like my dad did. He had to stifle those things and not, take care of something that was so personal. And it was very difficult.
Yeah, I mean, sharing your passion and seeing your dad's experience and helping other people kind of realize their passions and encouraging them to explore that. I can't think of a better reason to collaborate on social media than that. I mean, whether your hobby is golf or whittling or what you do, I mean, it's a fantastic reason. So let's make sure that people know where to find your work. Tell us where we can find Scale Model Craft and, what your various pages and social media presence is at.
Yeah, so I have a web page that I haven't touched in 2 years, and that is and that's scalemodelcraft.com. And that's fun because it also has a lot of my woodworking. And it's neat because I don't sell my stuff that I make, right? I don't sell it because I make it for me, but you can see some of that stuff there, and it's fun because that is a part of what I do in dioramas. So that's my website. I'm on Instagram, Bill Huffman 1 on Instagram. I am on Facebook, Bill Huffman, and then YouTube, it is Scale Model Craft. Now, I don't do Twitter. I have a Twitter account. I have some other social stuff. It's so much. I don't know if I can manage all of it. I think between Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, and Patreon, when my Patreon is Scale Model Craft. Sorry, I should have said that. Between those, that kind of fills my docket, for social media. I haven't gone to the extreme of some people like saying, look, I'm just going to pick one and go for it. I don't know. I don't know if I necessarily want to do that, because I've also made some great friends on those other social medias. We're a little bit more social than sometimes YouTube can be. And those are great friendships and also inspiring people. So I like what they are, but I don't really want to expand it at this point, because there's a lot of management comments and feedback and stuff like that. I typically in my workday will go from morning, I get out here about 6:30 in the morning till noon, and I'm doing computer work, whatever kind of computer I got to do, social media, getting back to people, throwing up a short, whatever the case may be, doing that. And then at about noon, I swap to building and working, and then sometimes viewing, because I like to listen to the posse. The podcasts are great when I'm building, or I will have something on that, but I really don't want to expand it, So I hope that those are enough for folks to see what I do. For my consulting, I've got different ways of doing that. People can contact me for consulting, direct consulting. I've got paid consulting, and I've also got consulting as part of a Patreon package. And the Patreon package is working really great. The paid consulting is starting to work great, where people will pay me to come on and we do a 30-minute or an hour and a half, whatever the case may be. And we do just that. We do what I've talked about. We look at their idea. We explore some things. That is really, I think, what I would like to get across to people is the knowledge part of it. Me building something and selling it. Well, okay, that's fine and well. But I think hopefully what is worth more is the intellectual property that I can bring and give to people through those consultations, and help maybe expand something. I would love to be the Andy Klein for someone, because Andy Klein of Andy's Hobby Headquarters was what got me on this path.
Awesome. I think he's done that for a lot of people.
Yeah.
I love his approach, and he's very, very positive and just very, hey, look, you can do this. Let me show you. Let me show you. And that's very much. Well, speaking of kind of must-see videos, everybody needs to see the video you did of your workshop, because I think that's my only regret from coming up to Seattle in February is you and I didn't get a chance to go up and see your shop. I'm still kicking myself. We got to make
that wasn't happen. Your fault, if you remember.
No,
that was more on my end, unfortunately.
Yeah, but I mean, the workshop, it's almost like your partner in crime. People have got to see this, because as much as you're a character and what you do is certainly personality driven, you've created this space that allows Bill to be Bill. And it's a great video, and encourage people to really check that out. So anyway, well, what's next for Scale Model Craft? What, any plans to change things or just keep adding?
Well, for me, it's getting long form videos out. I think that's, when I was learning, it was those long form videos. It wasn't shorts. It wasn't seeing a completed article or maybe just a stage like through a short or a quick video or something like that. For me, it was being able to buckle down and watch an interesting video about a technique that I could apply. Right. And I think that's really super important too. It's topical because I can apply it right away. It's something that I want to take and use. And so that's what I want to create. I had done a short series before. You get into YouTube, you're trying all these different things to try to see what sticks, throw it up on the wall and see if it slides to the floor. I want to, I didn't add the bloody mess sliding to the floor. But anyway, because I love sci-fi and a little bit of horror. I love that kind of stuff. Yeah, I think trying to get out videos that really concentrate on every single thing I did to get this the way it is. And I hope I can get more videos out on mindset. I don't hear a lot of people talking about mindset. And you're mentioning the shop is brilliant, because the shop is to get me into a mindset. When I watch a movie to be there. I'm here, right? And it's fine and I love it, but I'd kind of like to be in Africa today. And so I put on a movie shot in Africa, and I'm not even so much concerned with it's the imagery. It's the placement. It's putting me in a place, and I create a situation. And so the shop is kind of like that too. I want people to be able to say, I walked into this room and it's inspiring, right? So if you can create a room that's inspiring, that you know that it's almost habit forming, when you walk in there, your mind switches and says, I'm in this creative space. That I think would be a great message. My very first shop, when my wife and I were dating in the early 90s, we've been married for many years. And I say many years because I don't know how many years it is. I don't do math. But so
oh man, hopefully she's not listening.
And on the apartment, it had, a little balcony, and there was like a place to put your barbecue, a little door. You could put your barbecue and some chairs in there. Well, I put a table, and literally this thing was 4 foot by 3 foot. And that was my first shop. I could go in there and I could close the door and I was in my shop, right? And by creating that little space, tiny space, it did not take away from our family. It did not interrupt a room. It wasn't sitting at the kitchen table, which is not a bad way to model, but you're at the kitchen table. So creating a space where it feels good to go to, it feels like this is where I create. This is a place where I'm kind of centered, that whole Zen deal. I think that is a great start. And so if I can get to the point where I can tell people about getting your mind and your body prepared, it's a real feeling when I come in here that I can do whatever I want, helps me take down those barriers if I can't, or no, I'm not going to try it, or that'll never come out if I do it. Those are the things those are the wheel chocks I'm trying to pull out from the aircraft so we can fly, right? I don't want those on the tarmac anymore. I got to get rid of them. And so sometimes just creating a space like I've done in this shop. I mean, I know I come out here every single morning and I work 7 days a week. I come out here, and as soon as I walk in the door, that's to create. There's no other purpose for this shop. I mean, I don't have to think about it. What am I going to do today? I'm going to create. Now, I don't always work on my models. We talked about that. I don't always work on wood, but I've got a place that I've created in my home that I can create, and I can feel comfortable doing it. And I can maybe close the door, right? And shut out the world, not my family, but the world. There's nothing wrong with that, to take a bit of a break for yourself and really create and really take that time and really try to express yourself. I really want to get that across to people, because for me, it's a part of your life. And if you suppress it, then you're not living your life. You're not finding your potential. We work, we make money. That's what we do. It's not who we are. If you can make it who you are, that's a wonderful thing. So I'd love to break down some of those barriers. I'd love for people to see that it doesn't take a lot. And people see this shop and say, well, I can never get that shop. Well, guess what? I said the same thing. I was working in a 4 by 3 foot shop making stuff, and I dreamed. Now that was 20 years of dreaming, but I am a person of manifestation. I do believe in belief. And I do believe that you can bring things into your life by keeping positive and inviting those things in.
Amen. Amen, brother.
You really, really can. Positivity absolutely overwhelms negativity without question, but you got to create that positivity sometimes, even when you're feeling negative.
Exactly.
That's your job. That's not somebody else's job. Your wife can't make you feel better. Your kids can't make you feel better. Your boss ain't going to make you feel better. You got to make you feel better, So I take a lot of personal responsibility in what's going on.
All right. So what are you working on now? What is on Bill's bench? What is Bill working on? What does Bill come in at 6:30 in the morning on a Sunday, on a holiday? What's he doing?
Yeah, it's right now I'm working on my first Maschinen Krieger.
There you go.
Yeah, you guys.
There you go.
I love it. Okay, so this story is I got this Maschinen Krieger from a friend of mine, Stephen Robbins, and he's a patron. And I've done a few projects with him, commission. I don't do commissions anymore, but I had done some for him. And as a thank you for one of them, he gives me this raccoon. And it sat there for a year and a half, maybe 2 years. And then these guys that I listen to, they have a podcast. It's called the Plastic Posse Podcast. If you haven't heard of them, they're great. You should check them out. And they said, we've got this group build coming up. Oh, they're brilliant. They got this group build. And I said, hey, I got one of those. And that's what I did. And so I had finished a build. I had finished Wolfenstein. And I have Andy's 1/16 M60 Easy 8. And that's my next project, right? That was the game plan. And I'm like, well, Nationals are coming up. I said I would have this thing done for Nationals. I better start that. And then I'll put a little bass on it because that was, we wanted a little bass on it. That was the plan. But what kicked it going was your guys' group build. I pull this thing off the shelf and I dive into it. And I started reading about Maschinen Krieger. I found Lincoln Wright.
Oh, the man.
I did all of this stuff. And, the era that this came from, I was in the military at the time. And I used to read, we'd be going to a range or we'd go training or whatever. And I'd have these little tiny dime store sci-fi books. And man, that stuff would just boom. I'm 20 years old again, and I'm reading these sci-fi books and I'm loving it. And it just evolved. So yeah, I'm working on that now and I'm absolutely loving it. And I really like the Maschinen Krieger, the little universe and the canon involved. And I'm building this, very complicated story about this diorama. And now I want to do more dioramas couched in this little world that I created for this diorama. And that's a wonderful thing because I'd never thought of that. My wife said, maybe you should do a couple of dioramas in the same arena. And I'm like, that's a really great idea. And then this pops up just immediately right afterwards. And I can see a universe with this. I can see where this could be 2 or 3 or 4 even other dioramas all in the same universe. And I love that idea, because that gives me the opportunity to fully express the story that I've built behind this, because there's a very complex story. And by doing that, I think the tie-in between the different ones, the collection, or it's not called a collection, but at the IPMS shows, they have one where you have a grouping, whatever that's called, of models that would work for that, So I just love the idea. So yeah, that's my current project. I'm fully, totally in on it. I'm getting close. I'm getting near the end. I have no idea what's going to be next because now I'm all excited about doing another Maschinen Krieger. But we'll see. But yeah, I'm just loving this Maschinen Krieger. And thank you guys for the group build, because it really did. That was the impetus that got me to build this particular kit, and then opened up this entire story that I created to go along with it that I am fully vested in now. It's just so cool. I mean, I could write a comic of the story that goes with this. And
that's
I'm
awesome.
I love it. It's just the greatest thing. That kind of stuff. Those are happy accents. Those are little epiphanies. And I'm using the word wrong, but I mean, those are things that just pop up. I get so excited about, and it's like that when I'm talking to friends, and I'm like, oh man, look at this, and that's great. That's a lot of fun.
Yeah, Lincoln Wright is a good friend of mine. I've known him since 2005, and
yeah.
I was the same way. I found him actually when he still had a blog page. When he was still working in Japan for Mr. Kao or Sensei. And I was in the military. I was actually overseas in Iraq when I found him. And it was just like, bang, it just hit me. Cause I remember being a kid reading these little, these comic books and these little novels. I remember reading Starship Troopers back when it was a novel many, many years, way before it became a movie. And the book is so much better. But, and I remember this, and that you're right. That it just gets in your head and just go. And it's great to see that.
The shapes, the everything just reminds me of that era. Yep. They're pulling it from World War II models and stuff to build. It just fit. It just fit those narratives, and it's so fun.
Yep, it is. It's a blast.
Awesome, man. You're certainly not somebody that lacks for mojo. Just sitting here sitting here talking to you is just like, oh man, I go build something right now. This is
I'm a
this
little
has been
much for
great.
some people, that's for sure, though.
No, we just, it's been great, Bill. And, it was awesome getting to know you initially and, appreciate you spending some time with us. Scale Model Craft, continued success on that. It's fantastic. Go check it out, listeners. Give it a try. I think you won't be disappointed. You're going to really Bill certainly is excited about what he does, and that's awesome. But he's also really, really good at what he does. You beautiful craftsman. Craftsman is the word that kind of keeps coming to mind and everything. I love the woodwork and the attention to detail and everything. So again, Scale Model Craft on Patreon and on YouTube, and then Bill Huffman on Facebook.
Yes.
And
Instagram.
And Instagram. Bill Huffman 1 on Instagram.
Bill Huffman 1 on Instagram. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I've got other channels that I'm trying to get all to Scale Model Craft because I think that's better. I have a Facebook page, Scale Model Craft, but I need to do something to port it from Bill Huffman because it's really all that.
Yeah.
That'll be in the
Well, you got to have get a lab assistant or something to do that because you don't want to take too much time from the creativity. So anyway, well, thank you, Bill. This has been awesome. Really have enjoyed this and look forward to getting to talk to you again soon. And next year in February, we got to figure out a way to hook up and check out
absolutely
the Casa de Bill, the shop where all the magic happens.
Definitely want you guys over. I think it'd be just great.
There you go.
Well, you take care and we will talk soon. And thanks again, man. This has been a blast.
Thanks very much. Have a great day, guys.
You too.
All right. Well, that was our interview with Bill Huffman. Hopefully you guys enjoyed that. Please check out his Patreon page over at Scale Model Craft. He does awesome work. I think you're going to learn a lot. And Bill just has an incredible passion for this hobby.
Ring-a-ding-ding, baby. We have merch. If you would like to rep the posse like Robert Klein, who sent us a great photo of himself wearing a sweet Triple P red t-shirt, you can check out all our awesome merch on our Triple P Teesprings page. You can find coffee mugs, t-shirts, jumpers, or even some of our world-famous Triple P lounge trousers. You can order all of your stylish Plastic Posse merch on the website at https://plastic-posse-podcast.creator-spring.com/
or loungetrousers.com.
Forgot about that one.
Thanks for riding along with us on the 71st episode of the Plastic Posse podcast. Your support, along with our great sponsors and patrons, what helps bring us, the Triple P, to you every 2 weeks. Got a gripe, maybe a suggestion? You can send us your feedback to plasticpossepodcast@gmail.com. If you haven't yet joined the Plastic Posse group on Facebook, now's as good a time as any. See you all in 2 weeks, and there's nothing else left but yeehaw! Boom, nailed it.
Nice. If you would like to support the Triple P and become a Plastic Posse Outrider, man, it's super easy. Just head on over to our Patreon page, www.patreon.com/Plastic Posse Podcast, and you can set up a recurring donation there. These contributions help offset the cost of bringing you the Triple P. There are 3 different tiers of support, and those start at just $1 a month. There are some great benefits for doing this. You get early access to our podcast. You get premium access to all of the hosts, the chance to appear on a podcast, and exclusive Triple P content that's posted there. There's going to be some really awesome stuff coming from JB for our Patreons this summer from Europe. So keep an eye open for that, all of you that are Patreons already. Well, let's recognize our amazing deputy marshals. These guys ride the range with us every month, and they do a great job. We have Brian Kreiner, Ken Childress, Nick Butta, Drew Gardner, Scott Hall, Tim Holm, Frank Perrone, Dennis Tennant, the voice of Bob, Jeremy Diamond, Ryan Smith, Terry Wilkinson, Chris Lovewell, Andrew Callis, Ethan Eidenmill, Bruce the Model Noob, Steve Baker, Eric DeGleish, Joe Porche, Graham Pearson, Patrick Brown, Steve Schaefer, Jay Kidd, Paul Burdett, Brandon Gentry, Robert Klein, Mark Ewing, Ted Kawahara, Toadman, Model Doc, Doug Reed, Greg James, Les Workala, B Colt 1911, John Everett, Josh Buck, Black Rifle Model Works, Thomas Bannock, Mark Bradley, Zach Pease, Joel Munson, Eric Brubaker, Jeremy Moore, DB Scale Model Studio, Matt Johnston, Jeremy Elliott, Mike Talley, Previous Seat, Mediocre Middle-Aged Modeler, Dan Nofel, and our buddy JC Osborne.
Let's also recognize our excellent posse foremen who give the deputy marshals a hand around the ranch. We have Eddie, George, G. Baker, Warhoff Models, Drew, Ross, Eric, Len, Cliff, Eric again, Mike, Benjamin, Craig, Papa, Logan, Red Beach One Studios, MD Models, JV, Toby, Damian, Kieran, Cody, Pete, Tim, Nuke Man Mike, Greg, JAK, Ash, Irish Pat, Paul, What's the Deal with Eyebones Models, Mr. Grizz, Jackson, Mac Armor, Chris, Lee, and Jamie.
And of course, our posse outriders. We appreciate all of you. Please consider posting a review of the Triple P on the podcast platform that you use. Each 5-star review helps other modelers find the Plastic Posse.
All right, so how's D4?
Oh man, so good. It's so good.
Is it?
You know, I don't want to spoil anything, but first of all, it's massive, which was my biggest complaint about D3 compared to D2. It's massive. The second thing is it's really, really customizable. The way your character looks, the way you play, the way you develop everything, every piece of armor, the way your skills are, it's just everything's really customizable. It's really awesome.
Would you playing it on computer?
Yeah, PC. Yep.
Yeah. Is it rage inducing?
No,
because I hear my brother screaming through the wall.
Maybe if he's playing hardcore and he dies.
I don't think he's very good.
I think those screams aren't rage, they're fear, because I ran into the butcher my first night. He's a random major boss, and
he's random now?
Yeah, he's random. And so literally anytime you go into a dungeon, there's a chance he could be in there. And that scream, Jensen, was probably fear, because that guy is, oh man, he is unbelievable. So, and anyway, yeah, the world bosses are really, really hard, really, really difficult, and it's awesome. I can't say enough about it.
Yeah,
I'm pretty pleased.
I want to get it. I probably will, because I've also want to get, I don't know if you guys have seen, it's called Bolt Gun. It's a new Warhammer game, computer game, and it's it's a boomer shooter, as they call them. So it's like a Doom early, like original Doom style, like reflex shooter. And I don't know, it's like when they first announced it, I'm like, that's gonna be dumb as hell. And then it came out, and then like everyone in like on every website and just people in groups are like, this game's actually really good. It's like if you took Doom from like 1990 or whatever and you made it now, it's like that's what this would be. It's really good. It's engaging. The guns are cool. Like the graphics, yeah, they're boomer shooter style graphics, which is the point. But it's like really good looking, and like I love Doom. I like the original Doom. I played it when I was a kid. My earliest gaming memories is playing Doom at my friend Kyle's house on his computer down in his basement. And yeah, so I think I might download that, but then I'm like, oh, I really want D4. I know if I get it, that's all I'm gonna want to do.
Yeah,
because it's like when I came back to D3 after like 10 years of not playing it, that's all I did for like months. It was just grind because as I mentioned before, I fall for that addictive gameplay loop so easy. It was just hook, line, and sinker. So I know if I download D4, it will consume me.
Well, I don't have anything to dispel that because what I love about it first and foremost is from an aesthetic standpoint. It's kind of circled back around to the D1, D2 aesthetic. It's a horror game. It's kind of D3 sort of went more to, I don't want to say cartoonish, but a little bit brighter, more focus on the adventure and a little bit less on the fact that if you live in Sanctuary as a human and you're trapped between these two factions, it sucks. And
also, didn't D3 had way more outside zones than like actual dungeons?
Yeah,
like, you could barely call D3 a dungeon crawler because you weren't in a dungeon very often. You were like, which was fine. Like running around outside of Sanctuary was neat, but like, I want to go in a dungeon and fight some monsters.
Yeah, well, you won't be disappointed. The aesthetic it's just hardcore Diablo. The story's compelling. There are just tons and tons of side quests, and it's massive. It's terrific so far. So,
what class are you?
Right now I'm playing a necromancer and using reap and bone spear skills, and then walking around with 6 or 7 skeleton helper dudes.
So my question is, in D3, everything you found, your chest was shared with everything under your account. Do you get a separate chest for every character? You haven't started a second player yet, so maybe you haven't seen that. That was something that bugged me because I would start a brand new character and it had access to some pretty killer weapons and some bonuses that I shouldn't have had access to. It didn't make me try as hard to advance.
Yeah, I've just I got early access a couple days ago, so I'm not into multiple characters yet, but I don't think that's how this is going to work.
Well, you don't have a shared was that the bank or whatever they called it?
Yeah,
I guess it was a chest. Like you would go click on the chest in town. Damn it, you're gonna make me get it.
All I know is I can't think of Diablo without thinking, stay a while and listen. I heard that thousands of times.
Well, obviously, if you followed Diablo, poor Deckard's not with us anymore, but there is an NPC in D4. I won't say who it is, but the voice actor is every bit as good as the voice actor for Deckard Cain. Really,
poor Deckard.
Amazing voice acting in this. And the one cool thing that's not a spoiler that I can say is the cutscenes for this game actually have your customized character in them. So you'll go in there and do your hair color and what you look like, your base character.
Do you talk?
Yeah, you talk.
You talked in D3. Not a whole lot. You weren't like silent, but like,
yeah.
I'm hopefully they bring it back. I just am disappointed that they didn't bring over the Crusader because that's my favorite.
Yeah.
My favorite class from D3, even though it wasn't one of the original ones. That and Demon Hunter, my other favorite class. Those are my two favorites.
Yeah, the Paladin Crusaders have been my favorite classes. And, if they follow Blizzard's pattern, in about a year, we'll get a massive DLC add on and probably add some of that stuff, I would imagine. So.
Yeah, I mean, I would be happy if they brought either the Paladin or the Crusader. I know they're technically different. Yeah. I mean, really, the Crusader is like a spiritual successor to the Paladin, but yeah, the Paladin or the Crusader from D3 is, oh god, I love that character, and it's so cool. Just their whole, I know I've mentioned it before, but like Holy Warriors are like my favorite archetype in any kind of fantasy. I don't know, something about them that it's just cool. I mean, I'm interested in like the actual historical crusades, so that kind of has to do with it, which obviously this is way different. Yeah, but just I love Holy Warriors, the whole thing, just the Paladins from World of Warcraft and the Paladins and Crusaders from Diablo. I like all that stuff.
My favorite character from D2 was the Assassin. I like setting traps. I like being able to drop traps all over the place and maybe weaken a room that way. Because she wasn't very strong, like physically, but she could do a lot of damage other ways.
They kind of they have the rogue, which is essentially like the assassin, right? Or you can play it like you played an assassin with traps and stuff.
Yeah, each character, the skill trees are going to blow your minds because they're so much bigger and broader than any other Diablo game before. And so, the rogue character class has incorporated several past characters and the play styles, and you can kind of choose which path that you go down. And that's really cool. And then, to the Crusader, I can't really say too much. I don't want to spoil it for anybody, but, with world bosses and the way that D4 plays, that particular character class would be an absolutely unbelievable group character. And I'm just going to leave it at that. But hopefully that's coming when they do their inevitable expansion.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, I don't really have anything else to talk about other than I'm excited to go see Spider-Man.
Yeah, I'm really stoked for that one.
Anytime I hear the name Spider-Man, okay, the show Friends sucks. I'm sorry, terrible show.
I will fight you.
I don't think it's funny. It's lame. It's 100% a product of its time. I didn't like it back then either. Looking at it now, it's even worse. However, there's one really funny bit between, I think, Phoebe and
Joey.
No, it wasn't Joey.
Chandler.
What's the other? Chandler. But they're talking about Spider-Man's name. And I think Phoebe asked, was it like Spider-Man with like a hyphen, or is it one word?
Why isn't it Spider-Man?
Chandler goes, no, there's a hyphen. He's not Spider-Man. He's not like Steve Spider-Man. And that's all I can think of is Spider-Man, which, because he does, but Batman, he does not have a hyphen. He's Batman is one word. Spider-Man is two words with a hyphen in between, or a dash, whatever you call that. I guess that's a dash, an N dash, I think. I don't know. But I'm so excited.
Because you can be called Goldman, but there's no Gold Man. Exactly. There should be a Gold Man.
So I'm really excited. I can't wait. Because Into the Spider-Verse is one of my favorite. It's just one of my favorite movies in general.
Awesome. Yeah,
it's great. To me, it's the best animated movie ever made. It's the best Spider-Man movie, and I'm a huge Spider-Man fan. I've always loved Spider-Man, and it's just the best. All of the Spider-Men in that movie are awesome. Like, I love Miles. Miles Morales was great, and Jake Johnson's dad bod Spider-Man was hilarious. I loved him, and of course Spider-Man Noir, or whatever one he was by who voiced him? Nicolas Cage. Oh, I loved him. He was so good. So I'm really looking forward to it. I've heard there's like, so obviously, because he goes like to meets all the other Spider-Men, so there's like a million of them. You saw it in the trailer. There's like 50 Spider-Men. But I can't wait, because my older daughter is going on her first date with her boyfriend Miles, and my younger daughter is disappointed, and I actually was like, I want to go see Spider-Man. Obviously, I'm not going to go. I'm not going to go on their date with them. And then I asked my younger daughter, I'm like, "Will you go see Spider-Man with me?" And she's like, "Yeah, okay, we can go." I'm like, "Cool." So we're going to go before them because I'm not going to go sit in their movie. They can do their own thing, hang out, whatever.
That's good.
Like, just disappointed. I'm like, I want to go see Spider-Man. Like, why do you get to go see it? I bought your ticket.
First date. Can my dad come with us?
No.
Yeah.
Luckily,
And you kind of build that like tradition. You're there when they're little, you're taking them to these movies. And so it's kind of something we do as dads. We take our kids to see these cool movies. And it, in a way, it's an excuse for us to see it, but we want to share it with
100%.
our kids. And then they start going and doing it with their friends and, girlfriends, boyfriends. And you're just like, oh man,
Yeah.
I miss out on that.
I'm really looking forward to this Spider-Man, and then also the Ninja Turtles animated one, which the style looks incredible. And
I'm not even a Ninja Turtle fan, and that looks really cool.
Yeah, same
that
here.
looks really cool.
But until Dune 2, which is the big one, those are the two I'm really looking forward to.
Indiana Jones.
I haven't decided. The trailer just
It's gonna be cool.
I hope so. The last one was
and I know I've said it before. I would rather watch Crystal Skull than Temple of Doom. I do not like Temple of Doom.
yeah.
I don't really like Crystal Skull either. This isn't like oh, I love that movie. No, I just don't. I dislike Temple of Doom that much.
Temple of Doom was bad. Yeah.
I don't know.
Sorry, Jackson.
I
was
freaking
bad.
love Indiana Jones. After Star Wars, really, and like Lord of the Rings, like Indiana Jones are like, that's my, if I had to pick trilogies, it would be Star Wars, the original Star Wars, Lord of the Rings, and then Indiana Jones. Because look, Temple of Doom isn't that bad. I don't prefer it.
It's the Alien 3 of the trilogy.
I like Alien 3.
Oh,
I liked Alien 3 for about 45 minutes and then it got dumb. Like the first part, I was like, why are people bashing this movie? And then it got bad.
and then you realize, it's like Indiana Jones. You have two, classics in Raiders and, and
Last Crusade.
Last Crusade. And then you have the Temple of Doom, and it was just, anyway. And then Alien and Aliens, which are like two completely different genres, but incredible movies in the trilogy. And then Alien 3, and you kind of came out of the theater with your head hung low.
So speaking quickly on Raiders of the Lost Ark, have you heard the internet theory that Indiana Jones caused World War II?
No.
Because if the Nazis had just taken the Ark back to Germany and they opened it, they would have just all died. But because he stopped them from taking it, they were able to continue to be Nazis, right? Like there's more to it than that. But the essential theory is
send it to Hitler, right?
Just give it to here, take it, guys. Go ahead and take it. And then let them open the Ark and unleash God's wrath on them. And it would have killed them all just like it did in the movie, but it only killed like 5 of them instead of literally all of them. Like, yeah, take it to Hitler. Here you go, buddy. Have fun with this. Oh, let's open it up, see what's in there. Oh, just kidding. You're all dead now. Cool. No World War II. We win.